Elizabeth Pierce, a powerful businesswoman who built her empire from nothing, finds herself caught between her demanding career and the complex dynamics of her family, struggling to balance success with maternal duties. In the glittering corporate towers and opulent mansions of her world, Elizabeth discovers a shocking conspiracy. Her trusted son-in-law and quiet daughter Jennifer are plotting to seize control of everything she's built. As mysterious illnesses, fabricated disappearances, and decades-old resentments surface, Elizabeth must unravel the web of deception before it destroys not just her company, but her entire family, forcing her to question whether she truly knew her children at all. Before we begin, write in the comments where you're listening to our stories from. Subscribe to our channel, it's free and you can always change your mind. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1. Shadows of Doubt. I never thought I'd have to hire a private investigator to follow my own son-in-law. But there I was, sitting across from John, a retired detective with weathered hands and eyes that had seen too much, sliding an envelope filled with cash across the table. "I need to know everything," I said, my voice steadier than my heart. "Where he goes, who he meets, what he says, everything." John nodded, tucking the envelope into his jacket without counting. "And if I find something you don't want to hear?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. I'd built my company from nothing, nurtured my family through hardship, and now I was facing a betrayal I couldn't yet name. "Then I'll pay you double," I replied, meeting his gaze. "The truth costs more than lies, and I'm prepared to pay." What I wasn't prepared for was how that truth would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family, especially about Jennifer, my quiet, unassuming daughter, who I never suspected would become my greatest enemy. The restaurant around us continued its evening bustle, waiters gliding between tables with practiced grace, the clinking of glasses and murmur of conversation creating a cocoon of anonymity. No one paid attention to an aging businesswoman and a man who looked like he'd spent his life walking through other people's nightmares. "It'll take a few days to establish his patterns," John said, his voice low and professional. "Derek's smart from what you've told me. If he's hiding something, he won't make it obvious." I nodded, the weight of my suspicions pressing down on my shoulders. For months, I'd noticed subtle changes in Derek. Late nights at the office, hushed phone calls, the way his eyes would dart away when discussing certain company matters. My son-in-law had always been ambitious, but lately, there was something else brewing beneath the surface, something that made my instincts scream. "Time is something I don't have much of," I said, thinking of Claire, my eldest daughter, still recovering from her illness, oblivious to the storm gathering around her marriage. "Derek's making moves within the company. I can feel it." "I'll start tonight," John promised, rising from his seat. His eyes, sharp despite the wrinkles surrounding them, held mine for a moment. "And Mrs. Pierce? When people show you who they are, believe them the first time." I watched him leave, those words echoing in my mind. I'd built Pierce Enterprises from the ground up, navigated through economic crashes and cutthroat competitors, all while raising 2 daughters after their father abandoned us. I knew how to read people. It was my superpower, or so I'd thought. But Derek had slipped past my defenses, charming his way into Claire's heart and eventually into a key position in my company. I'd welcomed him, mentored him, treated him like the son I never had. Now, the thought that I might have invited a viper into our nest made my blood run cold. Outside, the evening sky had darkened into that peculiar shade of navy that precedes true night. I paid the bill and stepped onto the sidewalk, the cool air a brief reprieve from the knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. My driver was waiting, the sleek company car purring quietly at the curb. "Home, Mrs. Pierce?" he asked as I slid into the back seat. "No," I said after a moment's hesitation. "Take me to the office. There's something I need to check." The Pierce Enterprises headquarters stood like a beacon against the night sky, its windows still lit on various floors where ambitious employees worked late. I'd always admired that drive. It reminded me of myself 30 years ago, when I was still fighting to carve out my place in a world that didn't expect women to succeed in business. The security guard at the desk nodded respectfully as I passed. "Working late, Mrs. Pierce?" "Always," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. In the elevator, I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. 62 years old, and here I was, playing detective in my own company. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh, but the humour evaporated as the doors opened onto the executive floor. Derek's office was dark, but I hadn't expected him to be here. He'd told Claire he was meeting with clients tonight, another lie, I suspected. My own office, larger and positioned at the corner of the building with windows on two sides, beckoned like a sanctuary. Once inside, I locked the door behind me and went straight to my computer. If Derek was plotting something, there would be traces in the company records, financial statements, meeting minutes, email exchanges, the digital fingerprints of betrayal. Hours passed as I sifted through files, searching for anomalies. My eyes burned, but determination kept me going. And then, just past midnight, I found something. A series of meetings Derek had scheduled that weren't in the official company calendar, with names I didn't recognize. Outside consultants, perhaps, or something more sinister? My phone rang, startling me in the silence. John's name flashed on the screen. "Tell me," I said, answering immediately. "He's meeting someone now." John's voice was tense. "At the Scarlet Room downtown, not the kind of place you take business associates." The Scarlet Room was an upscale bar known for its discretion and private booths. I'd been there once years ago for a meeting with a reluctant investor who preferred shadows to boardrooms. "Who is he with?" I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. There was a pause, too long to mean anything good. "Mrs. Pierce," John said finally, his voice careful. "He's with a woman. They appear intimate." I closed my eyes, pain lancing through me. Not for my own sake, but for Claire's. My daughter, kind and trusting, recovering from an illness that had nearly taken her from us, now betrayed by the man who had vowed to love her. "I need a photo," I said, surprised by the coldness in my voice. "Already taken. I'll send it now, but—" John hesitated. "You should prepare yourself." My phone pinged with an incoming message. I opened it, steeling myself for the image of my son-in-law with some unknown woman. The photo loaded, pixelated at first, then clearing to reveal Derek leaning close to a woman with dark hair, his hand covering hers on the table, their faces close enough to suggest intimacy beyond business. But it wasn't an unknown woman. It was Jennifer. My youngest daughter, Claire's sister, my quiet, unassuming Jennifer. The world tilted beneath me, and I gripped the edge of my desk to steady myself. "Mrs. Pierce, are you there?" John's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Yes," I managed, though I barely recognized my own voice. "Keep following them. I need to know where they go, what they do, everything." I ended the call and stared at the photo again, willing it to transform into something else, something that didn't rewrite my entire understanding of my family. Jennifer and Derek, my son-in-law and my daughter, betraying not just me, but Claire as well. The pieces started falling into place. Derek's sudden interest in company matters that were outside his purview. Jennifer's quiet questions about succession plans, the way they sometimes exchanged glances during family dinners that I'd attributed to shared-in jokes. Had I been so blind, or had they simply been that good at deceiving me? Either way, the game had changed. This wasn't just about protecting my company anymore. It was about protecting Claire from the two people who should have loved her most after me. I slipped my phone into my pocket and stood, a new resolve hardening within me. I'd built an empire from nothing. I'd survived abandonment, recession, and countless attempts to undermine my authority. I would survive this betrayal too. And more than survive, I would make sure that Jennifer and Derek paid for every lie, every secret meeting, every moment of pain they were about to cause Claire. As I left my office, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the darkened window. My face set in lines of determination that might have frightened me once, in another life, before I knew what it meant to be truly betrayed by my own blood. The war had begun, even if Jennifer and Derek didn't know it yet. And I had never lost a war in my life. I wasn't about to start now. Chapter 2, Web of Deception. Sleep evaded me that night. I paced my bedroom until dawn broke. The image of Jennifer and Derek burned into my mind like a brand. By morning, I had developed a strategy, one born from decades of business negotiations and corporate takeovers. I would watch, I would wait, and I would gather evidence before confronting them. My phone buzzed with a text from John. They spent 2 hours at the Scarlet Room, then went to the Meridian Hotel, left separately at 5 a.m. The Meridian, a luxury hotel downtown. My stomach churned at the implications. "Keep following them," I texted back. "I want daily reports." Over breakfast, I maintained a facade of normalcy as Claire joined me, looking better than she had in weeks. The colour had returned to her cheeks, and her eyes held that spark of life I'd feared lost during her illness. "Mom, you look tired," she said, concern in her voice as she poured herself tea. "Are you sleeping okay?" I smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "Just business matters, darling. Nothing for you to worry about." "Derek says the same thing," she replied with a small laugh. "You two work too hard." At the mention of his name, I felt a flash of rage so intense it momentarily blinded me. I took a sip of coffee to hide my reaction. "Speaking of Derek," Claire continued, oblivious to my inner turmoil, "he's taking me away for the weekend, a little cabin in the mountains. He says I need fresh air to complete my recovery." My heart froze. Derek taking Claire away. Was it coincidence or part of some larger plan? "That's thoughtful of him," I managed. "When do you leave?" "Friday afternoon." Her smile was radiant. "It's been so long since we've had time just for us, with my illness and his work." I nodded, my mind racing. Derek was planning something. I could feel it in my bones. This trip wasn't about Claire's recovery. It was about getting her away from the city, from me. "Have you told Jennifer about your trip?" I asked casually, watching Claire's face. "Not yet," she said. "I thought I'd invite her for lunch today to tell her. She's been so supportive through everything." Supportive, the word tasted like ash in my mouth. Jennifer had been supportive while sleeping with Claire's husband. The depth of the betrayal was unfathomable. After Claire left to prepare for her day, I called John again. "I need more," I said without preamble. "Derek's taking Claire away for the weekend. I need to know if Jennifer is involved, if they're planning something." "I'm on it," John promised. "I've got a tail on both of them now." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of surveillance reports and clandestine research. I dug through company records, searching for any evidence of financial malfeasance. If Derek was plotting a takeover, there would be traces, unusual meetings, unexpected financial transfers, emails that didn't quite make sense. John's reports grew more disturbing by the hour. Derek wasn't just meeting with Jennifer, he was meeting with investors, with board members I had appointed years ago, with people whose loyalty I had never questioned. "He's building a coalition," I murmured to myself as I reviewed the latest report in my home office. "Preparing for a coup." And Jennifer was helping him, my quiet, reserved daughter, the one who had always stood in Claire's shadow, the one I'd never worried about because she seemed content with her place in the family hierarchy, was now at the center of a plot to take everything from me. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. I had always thought Jennifer was the safe one, the stable one. While Claire shone brightly, drawing attention and acclaim, Jennifer had remained in the background. I had interpreted her reserve as contentment, her quiet nature as acceptance. How wrong I had been. On Thursday night, John called with news that turned my blood to ice. "They're meeting again," he said, his voice tense. "But not just the two of them. There are others, business types from what I can gather. They're at a private room at the Capitol Grill." "I need to know who else is there," I said, already reaching for my car keys. "Mrs. Pierce, I don't think—" "I'm going there myself," I cut him off. "Meet me outside in 15 minutes. I changed quickly into a simple black dress and heels, anonymous enough for an upscale restaurant, elegant enough not to draw attention. As I applied lipstick with a steady hand, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Her eyes were hard, calculating. This was the face I wore for hostile takeovers, for firing executives who had betrayed company loyalty. Never had I thought I would wear this face for my own daughter. John was waiting in an unmarked car when I emerged from my house. "They're still inside," he said as I slid into the passenger seat. 6 people total, including Derek and Jennifer. "Who else?" He handed me a tablet with images clearly taken through the restaurant's windows. "I've identified 3 of them so far: Martin Reynolds, CFO of Vantage Group, Eliza Chen, venture capitalist, and Thomas Blackwood." I sucked in a breath. Thomas Blackwood had been my mentor when I first started Pierce Enterprises. He had retired 5 years ago, stepping down from the board with accolades and a generous pension. That he would be part of this conspiracy felt like yet another knife in my back. "The last one," John continued, "is still unknown, but he seems to be leading the discussion." I studied the grainy image of a silver-haired man gesturing emphatically, his back partially to the camera. Something about him seemed familiar, but I couldn't place him. "Get me closer," I said. "I need to hear what they're saying." John looked uncomfortable. "That's not possible without risking detection, but—" He hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small device. "I managed to place this under their table earlier today. It's not perfect, but it might pick up something." He handed me an earpiece, and I inserted it, hearing the murmur of conversation mixed with the clink of silverware and ambient restaurant noise. "Our timing is crucial," came Derek's voice, slightly distorted but unmistakable. "Once Claire and I are away this weekend, we can finalize the details. And you're certain your mother-in-law doesn't suspect anything?" That was Thomas, his distinctive baritone sending a wave of anger through me. "She trusts me," Derek replied, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. "She still thinks I'm the devoted husband and son-in-law. Don't underestimate her," Jennifer's voice now, calmer than the others. "My mother didn't build Pierce Enterprises by being naive." "That's why we need to move quickly," the unknown man said, his voice carrying an authority that made the others fall silent. "The shareholders' meeting next month is our window. By then, we need to have everything in place." "And Claire?" Eliza Chen asked. "She's still a significant shareholder." There was a pause, and then Jennifer spoke, her voice so cold it was almost unrecognizable. "Leave Claire to me. Once the company is secured, she won't be an issue." I ripped the earpiece out, my hands shaking with rage. They weren't just planning to take my company, they were planning something for Claire as well. My daughter, who had just survived a life-threatening illness, was now a target for her own sister and husband. "Mrs. Pierce," John's voice seemed distant, "are you all right?" "Drive me back," I said, my voice a whisper. "I've heard enough." That night, I made my own plans. First, I called my attorney and arranged for new security protocols for all company accounts and records. Then I contacted the head of security at Pierce Enterprises, instructing him to limit access to sensitive areas without alerting anyone to the changes. Finally, I sat down at my desk and wrote 2 letters, one to Claire and one to the board of directors. I sealed them both, placing them in my safe. They were my insurance policies, to be used only if everything else failed. As dawn broke over the city, I steeled myself for what was to come. Derek would be taking Claire away in a few hours, thinking he was creating space for his plans to unfold. What he didn't realize was that he had just given me the perfect opportunity to confront Jennifer alone. I dressed with care, choosing a suit the color of steel, armor for the battle ahead. Today, I would face my daughter and discover just how deep her betrayal went. The house was quiet when I descended the stairs. Claire had already left for a doctor's appointment before her weekend trip, and the staff were occupied with their morning duties. I sent a text to Jennifer. "Need to speak with you, my study, 11 a.m. Her reply came quickly. I'll be there. I spent the intervening hours gathering my evidence. Photographs, financial records, transcripts of conversations John had managed to record. I laid them out meticulously on my desk, a paper trail of treachery. At precisely 11, there was a knock at my study door. "Come in," I called, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. Jennifer entered, looking as she always did, elegant, composed, her dark hair pulled back in a neat chignon. She was the image of professionalism, of quiet competence. How well she had played her part. "You wanted to see me, Mom?" she asked, taking the seat across from my desk. I studied her face, the face I had known since the moment she was born, the face I had watched grow from a solemn child into a reserved young woman. Was there any trace left of the daughter I thought I knew? "Yes, Jennifer," I said, folding my hands on the desk. "I wanted to talk to you about Derek." A flicker of something, alarm, concern, crossed her features, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "What about him?" she asked, her voice neutral. I slid one of the photographs across the desk. Jennifer and Derek at the Scarlet Room, their hands entwined, their posture intimate. "Would you like to explain this?" I asked quietly. She glanced at the photo, her expression unchanged. "I don't know what you think you're seeing, but don't!" My voice cut through her denial like a blade. "Don't insult my intelligence by lying to me. Not now, not after everything." Jennifer's eyes met mine, and in that moment, something shifted. The mask of the dutiful daughter slipped away, revealing someone I had never truly seen before. Calculating, cold, with a hardness I recognized because it mirrored my own during my toughest business battles. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice different now, all pretense gone. "Long enough," I replied. "Long enough to know that you and Derek aren't just having an affair. You're planning a takeover. You're planning to push me out and take control of the company." I paused, my voice dropping to a whisper. "And you're planning something for Claire." Jennifer didn't deny it. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "You always were perceptive, Mother," she said. "It's one of the qualities I admired most about you, always seeing the angles, always 3 steps ahead." "Not this time," I said, the words bitter in my mouth. "I didn't see this betrayal coming, not from you." "No, you didn't," she agreed, her smile widening. "Because you never really saw me at all, did you? It was always Claire, brilliant, beautiful Claire who got your attention, your approval, your love." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "That's not true," I began, but Jennifer cut me off with a laugh. "Isn't it? Do you know what it's like to live in her shadow, to always be the other daughter? The quiet one, the reliable one, the one who was never quite good enough to deserve your full attention." I stared at her, seeing my daughter through new eyes, not as the woman I thought I knew, but as someone shaped by resentments I had never recognized, by hurts I had unknowingly inflicted. "Whatever grievances you think you have," I said carefully, "this isn't the way to address them. Betraying your sister, plotting against your family." "This is exactly the way," Jennifer interrupted, leaning forward with sudden intensity. "You taught me that, Mother. You taught me that power is taken, not given. That in business, in life, you have to seize what you want because no one will hand it to you." "Not like this," I whispered, "not by hurting Claire." Jennifer's expression hardened. "Claire has had everything handed to her. Everything. Now it's my turn." She stood, smoothing her skirt with practiced composure. "You won't stop what's coming, Mother. It's already in motion. By this time next month, Pierce Enterprises will have new leadership, and there's nothing you can do about it." She turned to leave, but paused at the door, looking back at me with eyes that held both triumph and challenge. "You built an empire, Mother. Now watch me take it." The door closed softly behind her, leaving me alone with the wreckage of my assumptions and the terrifying knowledge that the greatest threat to everything I held dear was not an outside competitor or a market downturn, but my own daughter. And she had just declared war. Chapter 3, blood and business. Jennifer's words echoed in my mind long after she'd left the study. "You built an empire, Mother. Now watch me take it." The coldness in her voice, the unflinching determination in her eyes. This wasn't just about business. This was personal, a vendetta born from years of perceived slights and invisible wounds. I remained at my desk, hands trembling slightly as I gathered the evidence I'd spread out. The photos of Jennifer and Derek, the financial reports showing subtle discrepancies, the list of board members who had recently met with my son-in-law behind my back. They told a story of methodical betrayal, of a coup planned with surgical precision. My phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Claire. "Mom?" Her voice was bright, happy. "Just wanted to let you know we're heading out now. Derek's packed the car and we should reach the cabin by evening." I closed my eyes, picturing my eldest daughter, trusting, loving Claire, oblivious to the machinations of her husband and sister. "Have a wonderful time, darling," I managed, keeping my voice steady. "And Claire, remember that I love you very much." "I love you too, Mom," she replied, a hint of confusion in her tone at my sudden sentimentality. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I lied. "Just enjoy your weekend. We'll talk when you get back." After hanging up, I called John immediately. "I need you to follow them," I said, all pretense of calm abandoned. "Derek and Claire are leaving for a cabin retreat. I need to know if they make any stops, if Derek meets with anyone, if anything at all seems suspicious." "I'm on it," John replied. "But what about Jennifer? After your confrontation—" "I'll handle Jennifer," I said, a plan already forming in my mind. "Right now, Claire's safety is my priority." John's voice grew serious. "Do you think she's in danger?" The question hung in the air, forcing me to confront my deepest fear. Was Derek capable of harming Claire? Was Jennifer? The coldness in my youngest daughter's eyes had suggested a ruthlessness I'd never imagined she possessed. "I don't know," I admitted finally, "but I'm not taking any chances. Follow them, stay close, and call me if anything seems off." After ending the call, I sat in silence for several minutes, gathering my thoughts. Jennifer had thrown down the gauntlet, but I wasn't without resources. I hadn't built Pierce Enterprises by crumbling at the first sign of a hostile takeover. I reached for my phone again, dialing a number I rarely used. "Marcus! It's Elizabeth Pierce. I need a favor and it can't wait." Marcus Chen had been my head of security before he started his own firm 5 years ago. If anyone could help me navigate this treacherous terrain, it was him. "Mrs. Pierce," his deep voice rumbled through the phone. "It's been a while. What can I do for you?" "I need a complete security audit of Pierce Enterprises. Digital systems, physical access, personnel, everything. And I need it done quietly." There was a pause. "This sounds serious." "It is," I confirmed. "I believe there's an attempt underway to seize control of the company. I need to know exactly where the vulnerabilities are." "Internal threat?" he asked, cutting to the heart of the matter with his usual acumen. "Yes," I said, the word bitter on my tongue. "My son-in-law Derek and—" I hesitated, still struggling to say it aloud. "And my daughter Jennifer." Marcus didn't express shock or sympathy, one of the many reasons I valued him. Instead, he moved straight to logistics. "I can have a team in place by tomorrow morning. We'll start with the digital infrastructure, then move to physical security. But Mrs. Pierce, if this is as serious as it sounds, you might want to consider legal measures as well." "I'm handling that separately," I assured him. "But Marcus, this needs to be completely confidential. No one can know, especially not Jennifer or Derek." "Understood. I'll personally oversee everything." After hanging up, I moved to the window, looking out over the gardens that surrounded my home. The roses were in full bloom, their beauty at odds with the ugliness unfolding within my family. I'd always found clarity in these moments of quiet contemplation, but today there was only a growing sense of dread. What had I missed? How had Jennifer's resentment festered for so long without my noticing? And Derek, had he married Claire with this plot already in mind, or had Jennifer seduced him into betrayal later? The questions circled like vultures, offering no answers, only the gnawing certainty that I had failed somehow as a mother, as a mentor, as the head of this fractured family. My phone buzzed with a text from John. "They're on the highway now, no stops yet. We'll keep you posted." At least Claire was safe for the moment. That gave me time to focus on the immediate threat, Jennifer. I returned to my desk and opened my laptop, accessing the secure server where the most sensitive company information was stored. If Jennifer and Derek were planning a takeover, they would need leverage, financial information, client lists, strategic plans for the coming quarters. For the next several hours, I methodically changed access protocols, revoked certain administrative privileges, and created digital tripwires that would alert me to any unusual activity. It was a stopgap measure until Marcus's team could implement more comprehensive security, but it gave me a sense of having taken back some control. As evening fell, I received another text from John. "Arrived at cabin. All seems normal. Will maintain surveillance overnight." I exhaled slowly, some of the tension easing from my shoulders. Claire was safe for now, which meant I could turn my attention fully to Jennifer and her co-conspirators. I pulled up the company directory on my computer, studying the names and faces of those John had identified at the restaurant meeting. Thomas Blackwood's involvement still stung. He had been my mentor, my advisor in the early days when Pierce Enterprises was just a fledgling company fighting for recognition in a male-dominated industry. What had Jennifer offered him to turn against me? What had she offered all of them? A soft knock at my study door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, closing my laptop. My housekeeper, Rosa, entered with a tray. "You haven't eaten all day, Mrs. Pierce," she said, concern evident in her voice. "I brought you some dinner." I smiled gratefully, suddenly aware of the hollow feeling in my stomach. "Thank you, Rosa. I lost track of time." She placed the tray on a side table and hesitated, as if wanting to say more. Rosa had been with me for over 20 years. She had watched my daughters grow up, had been a constant presence through the highs and lows of our family life. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Pierce?" she asked finally. "You seem troubled." For a fleeting moment, I considered confiding in her. Rosa was loyal, discreet. She had been witness to other family crises over the years. But this betrayal was too raw, too enormous to put into words just yet. "Just some business complications," I said instead. "Nothing I haven't handled before." She nodded, clearly unconvinced, but too respectful to press further. "If you need anything else, just call." After she left, I picked at the food without tasting it, my mind racing through potential strategies. Jennifer's warning, "You won't stop what's coming," suggested that their plan was well advanced. The shareholders' meeting was just a month away. That gave me precious little time to counter whatever they had set in motion. My phone rang again. John. "Mrs. Pierce," he said without preamble, "there's movement here. Derek just left the cabin alone, said something to Claire about needing to make a work call where the signal is better." My pulse quickened. "Follow him." "Already am. He's walking up the road, away from the cabin." There was a pause, the sound of movement. "He's on his phone now. I can't hear the conversation, but he looks agitated." "Keep me updated," I instructed, already rising from my chair. 20 minutes later, John called back. "He made 3 calls," he reported. "The last one was to Jennifer. I heard him say her name. Then he got in the car and drove away." "Away?" I repeated, alarmed. "He left Claire alone at the cabin?" "Yes. Told her he needed to pick up some groceries they'd forgotten, but he's not heading toward any stores. He's going back toward the city." Cold fear gripped me. "Stay with Claire," I ordered. "Don't let her out of your sight. I'll handle Derek." I hung up and immediately called Marcus. "I need a location trace on Derek Pierce's cell phone," I said without preamble. "Right now." "That's not strictly legal without a warrant, Mrs. Pierce," Marcus reminded me, though his tone suggested he was already moving to comply. "I don't care," I snapped. "My daughter could be in danger. I need to know where he's going." There was the sound of typing, then, "Got him. He's on the interstate, heading back toward the city, moving fast." "Where is he going?" I murmured, more to myself than to Marcus. Want me to have someone intercept him? Marcus offered. I considered it briefly, then decided against it. No, for now, just track him. I want to know his destination. As I waited for Derek's movements to reveal his intentions, I turned my attention back to the company records. If Jennifer and her allies were planning to use the shareholders' meeting as their moment to strike, they would need supporting documentation, financial reports that painted the current leadership in a negative light, projections that suggested new management was needed. I began digging deeper into the accounting systems, looking for any signs of manipulation. It was painstaking work, requiring a level of focus that momentarily distracted me from the emotional turmoil of the day. 3 hours later, Marcus called back. Derek stopped at the Meridian Hotel downtown, he reported. Been there for the past hour. The Meridian again, where he and Jennifer had met before. Was she there now? I need to know who he's meeting with, I said. I've got someone heading there now, Marcus assured me. We'll have eyes inside within 20 minutes. While I waited, I continued my investigation into the company finances, and then I found it. A series of transactions hidden within legitimate business operations, money being siphoned into accounts I didn't recognize. The amounts were carefully calibrated to avoid triggering automatic alerts, but over time, they added up to millions. Jennifer had been embezzling from the company, using her position of trust to funnel money into secret accounts. And based on the timing, she'd been doing it for at least 6 months. My hands shook with anger as I downloaded the records, saving them as evidence. This wasn't just a betrayal of family, it was fraud, theft on a massive scale. Jennifer had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. My phone rang, Marcus again. Mrs. Pierce, our person got inside. Derek's meeting with Jennifer and 3 others in a private dining room. We've identified 2 of them, Thomas Blackwood and Martin Reynolds. The third is an older man, silver-haired, expensive suit. My operative is trying to get a clear photo. Send me whatever you have, I instructed, already pulling up my calendar. I needed to act fast to get ahead of whatever they were planning. Minutes later, my phone pinged with incoming photos. I scrolled through them rapidly. Jennifer and Derek sitting close together, their body language intimate despite the business setting. Thomas Blackwood looking older than I remembered, but still carrying himself with the same authoritative presence. Martin Reynolds, the CFO of Vantage Group, known for his aggressive acquisition strategies. And then I saw him, the silver-haired man whose back had been to the camera in the restaurant. Now his face was clearly visible, and I felt the blood drain from my face. Harold Winters, my ex-husband, the father of Claire and Jennifer, who had walked out on us 25 years ago when the girls were still young. It can't be, I whispered, staring at the face that had once been so familiar, now lined with age but unmistakable. Harold had left when Pierce Enterprises was still struggling to establish itself. He'd claimed the pressure was too much, that he hadn't signed up for a wife who cared more about her company than her family. The irony of his accusation had burned for years. I had built the company precisely for my family, to ensure that my daughters would never want for anything. And now he was back, conspiring with Jennifer to take control of the very company he had abandoned, the company that had thrived despite his absence. I called Marcus back immediately. I know who the third man is, I said, my voice tight with anger. Harold Winters, my ex-husband. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Marcus had been with the company long enough to know the history. That complicates things, he said finally. Yes, I agreed grimly. It does. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this new development. Harold's return explained so much. His experience in corporate law would be invaluable for a takeover attempt, and his presence added a personal dimension to Jennifer's betrayal that made it even more painful. Had he been in contact with Jennifer all this time? Had she maintained a relationship with her father behind my back, harboring resentment over his departure that she somehow blamed on me? My phone rang again, John this time. Mrs. Pierce, Claire's getting worried. Derek's been gone for hours, and she can't reach him on his cell. She's called me to the cabin to help her look for him." I closed my eyes, picturing Claire alone in the mountains, increasingly concerned about her absent husband. "What did you tell her?" "That I was in the area on another job and would be happy to help. I'm with her now." "Good," I said, relief washing over me. "Stay with her, John. Don't let her out of your sight." "There's something else," John added, his voice dropping. "While she was showing me around the property, looking for signs of Derek, I noticed something in their bedroom. A bottle of pills on Derek's side of the bed." "Pills?" I repeated, not immediately understanding the significance. "Unmarked bottle, no prescription label. I managed to pocket one while Claire was checking another room. I've sent a photo to a pharmacist contact of mine for identification." A chill ran through me. An unmarked pill bottle brought on a romantic getaway. It didn't feel right. "Let me know what you find out," I said, trying to keep the fear from my voice. The next hour passed in agonizing slowness. I continued my investigation into the company's finances, uncovering more evidence of Jennifer's embezzlement. The patterns were clear once I knew what to look for: small amounts skimmed from multiple projects, all funneled through a series of shell companies before landing in offshore accounts. The sophistication of the scheme suggested professional help, Harold's help most likely. My ex-husband had always been clever with financial structures, skilled at finding the grey areas in regulatory frameworks. My phone buzzed with a text from John. "Pills identified as high-dose sedatives not commonly prescribed. Pharmacist says they could be dangerous if combined with alcohol or other medications." The implications hit me like a physical blow. Claire was still taking medication for her recent illness. If Derek had planned to give her these sedatives, I dialed John's number with shaking hands. "Don't let her drink anything Derek brought," I ordered without preamble. "No wine, no pre-mixed cocktails, nothing." "Already ahead of you," John assured me. "I accidentally knocked over the bottle of wine he'd left out to breathe. Claire's drinking water now." Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by a new horror. If Derek had been planning to drug Claire, what was his ultimate goal? What part did this play in the larger conspiracy? I needed answers, and there was only one place to get them. "I'm coming to the hotel," I told Marcus when I called again. "The Meridian. I want to confront them, all of them, right now." "Mrs. Pierce, I strongly advise against that," Marcus replied, concern evident in his voice. "We don't know their full plan yet, and confronting them prematurely could—" "This isn't just about the company anymore," I cut him off. "They're plotting something against Claire, something involving drugs. I need to stop this now." There was a moment of silence, then, "I'll meet you there. Don't go in alone." I hung up, gathered the evidence I'd compiled, both physical documents and digital files saved to a secure drive, and headed for the door. As I reached for my coat, my phone rang again. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Elizabeth Pierce," I answered, already moving toward my car. "Mrs. Pierce?" The voice was male, unfamiliar. "My name is Dr. Robert Chen. I treated your daughter Claire during her recent illness." I stopped, my hand on the car door. "Yes, Dr. Chen. Is something wrong?" "I'm calling because I'm concerned," he said, his voice professional but tinged with worry. "Your son-in-law, Derek, contacted me last week requesting copies of Claire's medical records, specifically her current medication regimen and any potential contraindications." My blood ran cold. "And did you provide this information?" "I explained that I would need Claire's consent," the doctor continued. He assured me she had authorized it, but when I asked to speak with her directly, he became evasive. I insisted on patient confidentiality protocols, and he eventually left without the information. "Thank you for telling me this," I said, my mind racing, "and thank you for protecting my daughter's privacy." "There's more," Dr. Chen added. He seemed particularly interested in how her medication would interact with sedatives or sleeping aids. He claimed she was having trouble sleeping at the cabin, but something about his manner concerned me. That's why I felt I should call you. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture more horrifying than I had imagined. Derek hadn't just been planning to drug Claire. He had been methodically researching how to do it in a way that might mimic a medical emergency, possibly even death. "Dr. Chen, I need you to document this conversation," I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. "Write down everything Derek asked about when he visited, what exactly transpired. It may become important evidence." "Evidence?" the doctor repeated, sounding alarmed. "Mrs. Pierce, do you believe Claire is in danger?" "Yes," I said simply, "I do, and I'm going to stop it." After ending the call, I drove to the Meridian with a singular focus, all the confusion and hurt of the day crystallizing into cold, clear purpose. Jennifer, Derek, Harold, and their co-conspirators weren't just planning a corporate takeover. They were plotting something far more sinister, with Claire as their target. The realization transformed my understanding of their entire scheme. It wasn't just about control of Pierce Enterprises, it was about inheritance. With me pushed out and Claire eliminated, Jennifer would be the sole heir to everything I had built. As I pulled up to the hotel, Marcus was waiting, flanked by two of his security team, both former military based on their bearing. "They're still inside," he informed me as I approached. "Private dining room on the mezzanine level. My operative reports that the meeting appears to be wrapping up." "Good," I said, straightening my jacket. "I want to catch them together, all of them." Marcus's expression was grave. "Mrs. Pierce, I understand your urgency, but we should consider involving the police. If what you suspect about their intentions toward Claire is true, we will," I assured him. "But first, I need to confront them. I need to see their faces when they realize I know everything. It wasn't just about gathering information anymore. I needed to look into Jennifer's eyes to understand how my daughter, my own flesh and blood, could have become capable of such calculated malice. "Stay close," Marcus instructed his team as we entered the hotel lobby. "But keep a low profile. We don't want to alert them before Mrs. Pierce has a chance to speak with them." The Meridian was one of the city's most exclusive hotels. Its lobby a study in understated luxury. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, discreet staff trained to anticipate needs without intruding. We took the elevator to the mezzanine level in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. As the doors opened, Marcus put a hand on my arm. "Are you sure about this?" I met his gaze, seeing the concern there. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He nodded once, then led the way down the corridor to the private dining rooms. Outside the last door, he paused, listening. The murmur of voices could be heard from within. The meeting was indeed wrapping up. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what was to come. Then I pushed open the door. 5 faces turned toward me in unison, expressions morphing from surprise to alarm as they registered my presence. Jennifer recovered first, her composure slipping back into place like a well-worn mask. "Mother," she said, her voice betraying only the slightest tremor, "this is unexpected." "I'm sure it is," I replied, my gaze moving from her to Derek, who had half risen from his chair, his face pale. Then to Thomas Blackwood, who at least had the grace to look ashamed. To Martin Reynolds, watching with the calculating eyes of a man assessing a new business risk. And finally, to Harold, my ex-husband, the man who had walked away from his family, now back to destroy what remained of it. He had aged, grey hair replacing the dark brown I remembered, lines etching his once handsome face. But his eyes were the same, cold, assessing, devoid of the warmth that had first drawn me to him decades ago. "Elizabeth," he said, and the familiar voice sent a jolt through me, memories surfacing of happier times, before ambition and resentment had corroded our marriage. "You're looking well." "Wish I could say the same for you, Harold," I replied, my voice ice. 25 years is a long time, long enough to forget you abandoned your daughters? Or did you just abandon one of them?" Jennifer flinched almost imperceptibly, confirming my suspicion that she had maintained contact with her father while keeping it secret from Claire and me. "Mrs. Pierce," Thomas Blackwood began, clearly aiming for a conciliatory tone, "this isn't what it appears, isn't it?" I cut him off, pulling out my phone. Let me see if I understand correctly. You're planning to use the shareholders meeting next month to force me out. Jennifer has been embezzling funds to finance this little coup. And Derek, I turned to my son-in-law, who seemed to shrink under my gaze. Derek has been tasked with eliminating Claire from the equation. How am I doing so far? The silence that fell over the room was deafening. Even Jennifer, usually so composed, looked shaken by the precision of my accusations. You have no proof, she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. Don't I? I held up my phone, displaying one of the financial records I'd uncovered. 6 months of systematic theft, Jennifer. Millions diverted through shell companies to offshore accounts. Did you really think I wouldn't find it? Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected me to uncover the financial trail so quickly. And you, I continued, turning to Derek. Asking Claire's doctor about drug interactions, bringing unmarked sedatives to a remote cabin, planning what exactly? An accident? A suicide? Something that would look like her illness had returned. Derek's face drained of all colour, and he sank back into his chair as if his legs could no longer support him. You're making wild accusations, Harold interjected, his lawyer's instincts kicking in. Nothing you've said constitutes evidence of a crime. I laughed, the sound brittle in the tense room. I'm not here to present evidence to a court, Harold. Not yet, anyway. I'm here to tell all of you that your plan has failed. Claire is safe, the company is secure, and you… I looked directly at Jennifer. You have lost everything, your position, your inheritance, and your family. For the first time, I saw genuine emotion crack through Jennifer's facade. Not remorse or shame, but pure, unadulterated rage. You think you've won, she hissed, rising to her feet. You think you can just waltz in here and shut everything down? You have no idea what I'm capable of, what I've already set in motion. I know exactly what you're capable of, I replied quietly. That's why I've already contacted the authorities. It was partly a bluff. I hadn't yet gone to the police with my evidence, wanting first to confirm my suspicions face to face. But the effect of my words was immediate. Martin Reynolds stood abruptly, gathering his papers. I think this meeting is over, he announced, his businessman's instinct for self-preservation overriding any loyalty to the conspiracy. Mrs. Pierce, I want to be clear that I was only here to discuss potential investment opportunities. I had no knowledge of any illegal activities. Thomas Blackwood followed suit, avoiding my gaze as he mumbled similar denials. Within moments, they had both fled the room, leaving only Harold, Jennifer, Derek, and me, with Marcus and his team watching silently from the doorway. It's over, Jennifer, I said, my voice softening slightly. Despite everything, she was still my daughter, and the pain of her betrayal was a wound that would never fully heal. Whatever you think I did or didn't do, whatever grievances you've nursed over the years, this isn't the way. You don't get to tell me what is or isn't the way, she shot back, her composure completely gone now. You never saw me, never valued me. Everything was always about Claire, about your precious company. Well, now it's about me, and I'm not backing down. Harold placed a restraining hand on Jennifer's arm. That's enough, he said quietly. Elizabeth is right. It's over. Jennifer wrenched her arm away, her eyes blazing. No, it's not. I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much. I won't let her win again. Jennifer, I began, but she cut me off with a gesture. Save it, Mother. This isn't over, not by a long shot. With that, she stormed past me, pausing only briefly at the door to deliver a final parting shot. You built an empire on other people's backs, Mother. Don't be surprised when it comes crashing down around you. And then she was gone, leaving me face to face with the two men who had betrayed me in such different but equally devastating ways. My ex-husband and my son-in-law. Derek couldn't meet my eyes, his gaze fixed on the table before him. Harold, however, looked at me directly, his expression unreadable. You always were formidable, Elizabeth, he said finally. I told Jennifer that, but she wouldn't listen. How long? I asked, the question encompassing so much more than just the conspiracy. How long have you been in contact with her? Harold sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 67 years. Since she turned 18, she found me, not the other way around. She was angry, felt overlooked, undervalued, so you encouraged her to betray her family. The bitterness in my voice was unmistakable. No, he said, shaking his head. At first, I just listened. Then I tried to help her find her place in the world, separate from you and Claire. But over time, her resentment grew. When she came to me with this plan 6 months ago, I should have said no, but you saw an opportunity, I finished for him. A chance to get your hands on the company you walked away from, the success you had no part in building. He didn't deny it, which was perhaps the only honest thing about him in that moment. I turned to Derek, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. And you? What was your price for betraying Claire, for planning to harm the woman who loved you, who stood by you? He looked up finally, his face a mask of misery and self-loathing. Jennifer, she made me feel special, important. Claire was always so perfect, so beloved by everyone. Jennifer understood what it was like to be second best. The pathetic justification only deepened my disgust. So you were willing to harm Claire, possibly even kill her because your ego was bruised? I wouldn't have gone through with it, he whispered. I couldn't have. You brought sedatives to a remote cabin, I reminded him coldly. You researched drug interactions with Claire's medication. What would you call that if not intent? He had no answer, his gaze dropping once more to the table. Here's what happens now, I said, addressing both men. Derek, you will leave the cabin immediately. You will not contact Claire again. Your employment with Pierce Enterprises is terminated, effective immediately. Any attempt to access company property or information will result in criminal charges. I turned to Harold. As for you, I suggest you leave the city. If I find you've had any further contact with Jennifer, or if there's any indication you're still involved in this scheme, I will ensure you face the full legal consequences of your actions. Harold's expression hardened. You always did like giving orders, Elizabeth. And you always did like taking the easy way out, I countered. Nothing's changed, has it? With that, I turned to leave, pausing only to look back once at the two men who had conspired to destroy everything I held dear. Consider yourselves lucky I haven't called the police yet. That could change at any moment. As I walked out of the room, Marcus fell into step beside me. That was impressive, he said quietly. But what now? Jennifer's still out there, and based on what she said, she's not giving up. I nodded, the weight of the situation settling back onto my shoulders. Now we protect Claire, and we prepare for whatever Jennifer might do next. My phone buzzed with a text from John. Claire's asleep, no sign of Derek, everything secure here. At least one of my daughters was safe. But as I left the hotel, stepping into the cool night air, I knew the battle was far from over. Jennifer's rage, her determination to take what she believed she deserved, these weren't things that would dissipate overnight. This was just the beginning of a war I had never wanted to fight, against an enemy I had never expected, my own daughter.
Enjoying our stories? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our upcoming content. Now let's get back to our story.
Chapter 4: The Gathering Storm. The drive back to my home was a blur, my mind racing with everything that had transpired. In the span of a few days, my world had been upended. My youngest daughter had revealed herself as my enemy. My son-in-law had plotted against my eldest daughter. My ex-husband had returned like a ghost from the past, breathing life into old wounds I'd thought long healed. When I arrived home, the house felt different. No longer the sanctuary it had once been. Every shadow seemed to hide secrets. Every corner harbored potential threats. I walked through the silent rooms, checking locks, drawing curtains, activating the security system with a vigilance I hadn't felt necessary before. My phone rang as I was pouring myself a much-needed glass of scotch. John again. "Claire's still asleep," he reported. No sign of Derek, but someone drove past the cabin twice in the last hour. Same car both times. My hand tightened around the glass. Get a plate number if you can. Already did. Marcus is running it now. I took a long sip of scotch, the burn in my throat a welcome distraction from the cold fear in my stomach. Good. Keep me posted on any changes. After hanging up, I moved to my study and unlocked the safe behind a painting, a security cliché, but effective nonetheless. Inside was a gun I'd purchased years ago after a series of threats from a disgruntled former employee. I'd never fired it outside of the shooting range, had never thought I would need to. Now I checked it methodically, making sure it was loaded, then placed it in the drawer of my bedside table. I wasn't naive enough to think that Jennifer would simply give up. The rage I'd seen in her eyes at the Meridian wasn't the kind that dissipated with a single defeat. It would fester, grow, reshape itself into new plans of attack. My phone rang again, Marcus this time. The car near the cabin is registered to Eliza Chen, he informed me, the venture capitalist from the meeting. She's working with Jennifer, I concluded, remembering her hasty exit from the hotel. She may have left the meeting, but she's still part of the conspiracy. It appears so, Marcus agreed. I've instructed my man with John to be on high alert. If she approaches the cabin, they'll intercept her. I thanked him and hung up, then dialed my attorney, despite the late hour. Walter Green had been Pierce Enterprises' legal counsel for 15 years, and my personal attorney for longer than that. If anyone could help me navigate the legal minefield ahead, it was him. Elizabeth, he answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. It's after midnight. What's happened? I need you to come to my house first thing tomorrow, I said, not bothering with apologies. It's an emergency, Walter. Jennifer has been embezzling funds, and she's part of a conspiracy to take over the company. There was a long pause, then the sound of movement. Walter sitting up in bed, I imagined, instantly alert despite the hour. How much has she taken? He asked, his lawyer's mind immediately focusing on the practical details. Millions, from what I've uncovered so far, but it's worse than that. She and Derek were plotting against Claire as well, something physical. Walter's sharp intake of breath was audible even through the phone. My God, Elizabeth, have you gone to the police? Not yet, I admitted. I wanted to consult with you first to understand our legal options. I'll be there at 7, he promised. Don't do anything until we've talked. After hanging up, I tried to rest, but sleep proved elusive. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jennifer's face contorted with rage, heard her final threat echoing in my mind. This isn't over. At some point, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the gaps in the curtains, and my phone was ringing insistently on the bedside table. Elizabeth Pierce, I answered, my voice rough with sleep. Mom? Claire's voice tight with confusion and fear. Mom, Derek never came back last night. John found his car abandoned on the road about a mile from the cabin. The sheriff's here, and they're organising a search party. I'm scared, Mom. I sat up instantly, fully awake now. Claire, listen to me. I'm coming to get you. Pack your things and wait for me at the cabin. Don't go anywhere with anyone else, not even the sheriff. Do you understand? Mom, what's going on? Her voice rose with panic. You're scaring me. I'll explain everything when I see you, I promised, already moving toward my closet. Just do as I say, please. I'll be there as soon as I can. I dressed quickly, calling Marcus as I headed downstairs. Derek's missing, I informed him. Or at least he's pretending to be. His car was found abandoned near the cabin. It could be a ploy, Marcus suggested. Make it look like something happened to him, cast suspicion elsewhere. My thoughts exactly, I agreed, grabbing my car keys. I'm heading to the cabin now to get Claire. I need you to track Jennifer. If this is part of some new plan, she'll be involved. I'm on it, Marcus assured me. And Elizabeth, be careful. This feels like a setup. The drive to the mountain cabin took nearly 2 hours. Every minute a torturous exercise in restraint as I fought the urge to push my car faster around the winding roads. When I finally arrived, the area around the cabin was a flurry of activity. Police vehicles, search and rescue teams preparing to head into the surrounding forest, local volunteers gathering in groups. I spotted Claire immediately, standing on the cabin porch with John beside her, her face pale with worry. The relief in her eyes when she saw me was palpable. "Mom!" she cried, running to meet me as I stepped from the car. "They think something's happened to Derek. His car was just sitting there, door open, keys still in the ignition, and there were signs of a struggle." I embraced her tightly, looking over her shoulder at John, who gave me a subtle shake of his head. He doesn't believe it either, I realized. "Let's get your things," I said, guiding her back toward the cabin. "I'm taking you home." "But the search," she protested. "The professionals will handle it," I interrupted firmly. "You need to rest. You're still recovering, and this stress isn't good for you." Inside the cabin, while Claire packed her belongings, I pulled John aside. "What do you think?" I asked quietly. "It's staged," he replied without hesitation. "The signs of struggle are too perfect. Scuff marks in the dirt, a dropped cell phone with a cracked screen, even a torn piece of Derek's shirt caught on a branch. It's like a movie set." I nodded, having suspected as much. "Where's Eliza Chen? Her car was spotted here last night." "Gone by the time I went to investigate," John said. "But one of the deputies mentioned seeing a woman matching her description at a gas station about 20 miles down the mountain early this morning. She's working with Jennifer," I explained briefly. "This is all part of some plan. I just haven't figured out what yet." Once Claire had gathered her things, I spoke with the sheriff, providing my contact information and insisting that Claire needed to return to the city for medical reasons. He seemed understanding enough, promising to call with any developments in the search. On the drive back, Claire was mostly silent, staring out the window with red-rimmed eyes. I knew I needed to tell her the truth about Derek, about Jennifer, about all of it. But I couldn't bring myself to shatter her world just yet, not until she was safely home. My phone rang, the car's Bluetooth system displaying Marcus's name. "You're on speaker," I warned as I answered. "Claire's with me." "Understood," Marcus replied smoothly. "Just checking in on your ETA. Everything is prepared at the house as requested." I silently thanked him for his discretion. "We should be there in about an hour." "What's being prepared?" Claire asked after I ended the call, her voice small but sharp with suspicion. "Security measures," I replied truthfully. "Given Derek's disappearance, I'm taking some precautions." She nodded, accepting this explanation for now, and lapsed back into silence. When we arrived at my home, Marcus met us in the driveway, flanked by two of his security team. Claire looked alarmed at the sight. "Mom, what's really going on?" she demanded as we entered the house. "This isn't just about Derek disappearing, is it?" I exchanged a glance with Marcus, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "It's time," his look said. "Sit down, Claire," I said gently, guiding her to the living room sofa. "There are things I need to tell you, things that will be difficult to hear." Over the next hour, I laid out everything. The affair between Derek and Jennifer, the plot to take over the company, the evidence of embezzlement, even the sedatives and Derek's inquiries about Claire's medication. I spared her only the knowledge that her father was involved, a truth that felt too cruel to add to the already overwhelming revelations. Claire listened in stunned silence, her face growing paler with each new disclosure. When I finally finished, she sat motionless, her eyes fixed on some middle distance, unseeing. "Claire?" I prompted gently, reaching for her hand. "I know this is a lot to process." She pulled away from my touch, rising abruptly from the sofa. "I need a moment," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please." I watched her walk upstairs, her steps unsteady, and felt a wave of rage at Jennifer and Derek for putting her through this pain. Claire had always been the gentle one, the peacemaker, quick to see the good in others. That trusting nature, which I had always considered a strength, had been cruelly exploited by the two people she should have been able to trust most. "She'll need time," Marcus said quietly, having witnessed the conversation from a respectful distance. "It's a lot to take in." I nodded, exhaustion suddenly washing over me. Any news on Jennifer's whereabouts? Nothing concrete yet, he admitted. She's not at her apartment, not at the office. We're monitoring her credit cards and phone, but so far nothing. And the missing husband charade? Any ideas what they're playing at? Marcus looked troubled. It could be a distraction, something to keep attention focused elsewhere while they make their next move. Or what? I prompted when he hesitated. Or they're setting up a narrative. If something were to happen to you or Claire, having Derek missing creates a convenient alternative suspect. The implication sent a chill through me. I'd already considered that Jennifer's ambitions might push her to desperate measures, but hearing Marcus voice it made the threat feel more immediate, more real. Double the security, I ordered. No one gets near Claire, and I want someone with eyes on this house at all times. Marcus nodded, already reaching for his phone to relay the instructions. What about the shareholders' meeting? It's still scheduled for next week. I had almost forgotten about the meeting in the chaos of the past few days. It had been Jennifer's original target date, the moment when she and her conspirators had planned to make their move against me. We proceed as planned, I decided, but with enhanced security and a new agenda. I'll need to address the embezzlement, make it clear that the company is stable despite these internal issues. My phone rang. Walter, my attorney, who had arrived at the house while I was driving to the cabin and been briefed by Marcus on the situation. I've reviewed the financial records you uncovered, he said without preamble. It's definitely embezzlement, and we have more than enough evidence to bring charges against Jennifer. What about the others? I asked. Derek, Harold, the co-conspirators? That's more complicated, Walter admitted. We can prove Jennifer's direct involvement in the financial crimes, but unless one of them turns on the others, it's mostly circumstantial for the rest. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the one I expected. Corporate conspiracies were notoriously difficult to prosecute, especially when the participants were careful about what they put in writing. What do you recommend? I asked, trusting Walter's legal judgment as I had for decades. For now, secure the company, change access codes, lock down sensitive information, notify the board of what's happened, at least in broad strokes. As for criminal charges against Jennifer, that's your call. She's your daughter. The reminder was unnecessary and painful. Despite everything, despite the rage and betrayal I felt, part of me still struggled to reconcile the Jennifer I thought I knew with the woman who had plotted so ruthlessly against her own family. I'll think about it, I said finally, but first I need to find her. After hanging up, I checked on Claire, who had secluded herself in the guest room she always used when staying at my house. The door was locked, and there was no answer to my gentle knock. I could hear muffled sounds from within. Crying, I realized with a pang of guilt. My strong, resilient daughter, broken by the betrayal of those she loved. I returned downstairs to find Marcus in quiet conversation with one of his security team, their expressions grim. What is it? I asked, immediately sensing bad news. Marcus dismissed his colleague with a nod before turning to me. We've located Jennifer, he said, his voice careful. She's at the Guardian Hotel downtown, and she's called a press conference for tomorrow morning. I felt the blood drain from my face. A press conference? About what? The announcement is vague. Something about revelations regarding Pierce Enterprises' leadership and future. But given everything that's happened, she's going public with accusations against me, I finished, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Creating a media spectacle to damage the company and force the board's hand. It was a clever move. Even baseless accusations, when amplified by media coverage, could create enough doubt to shake investor confidence and rattle the board of directors. A public relations nightmare could accomplish what her backroom conspiracy had failed to do. We need to get ahead of this, I said, my mind already racing through potential countermeasures. Call Walter back, tell him to draft a statement from the company addressing the embezzlement. We'll frame it as an unfortunate discovery that the company is handling transparently. Marcus nodded, reaching for his phone. What about Derek's disappearance? That's bound to come up. Include a brief statement expressing concern and cooperation with authorities, I decided. But keep it minimal. We don't want to feed that narrative more than necessary. As Marcus made the call, I paced the living room, considering our options. Jennifer had shifted strategies, moving from a covert takeover to a public assault on my leadership. It was a desperate move, but potentially effective if managed properly. "What are you planning to say?" The voice startled me. I turned to find Claire standing in the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed but clear, her posture resolute. "Claire," I began, uncertain how much she'd overheard, "you should be resting." "I've had enough rest," she replied, moving into the room. "My husband and sister have betrayed me in the worst possible way, and now they're trying to destroy our company. I don't need rest. I need action." I studied my daughter's face, seeing not just the pain of betrayal, but a steely determination that mirrored my own. In that moment, Claire looked more like me than she ever had before. The same set to her jaw, the same fire in her eyes that had carried me through countless business crises. "Jennifer's called a press conference for tomorrow," I explained. "We believe she's going to make accusations against me, against the company's leadership." "Then we need to be there," Claire said immediately. "Both of us present a united front." I hesitated, concerned about subjecting her to such public scrutiny so soon after learning the devastating truth about Derek and Jennifer. "Are you sure you're ready for that? The media will be merciless, especially once they get wind of the personal aspects of this story." "I'm a Pierce," she said simply. "I was born ready." Pride surged through me, momentarily displacing the anger and fear that had dominated my emotions for days. This was my daughter, not the fragile invalid Derek had tried to exploit, but a strong, resilient woman ready to stand with me against those who would harm our family and legacy. "All right," I agreed, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "We'll face this together." The next several hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Walter arrived with drafts of press statements and legal documents. Marcus's team reported on security arrangements for the shareholders' meeting and contingency plans for various scenarios Jennifer might orchestrate. I spoke with key board members individually, providing carefully curated information about the situation and reassuring them of the company's stability. Through it all, Claire remained by my side, her initial shock giving way to focused determination. She reviewed statements, offered suggestions, and even spoke directly with several board members who had known her since childhood, leveraging their personal connections to reinforce loyalty to the current leadership. As evening fell, we gathered in my study for a final strategy session before Jennifer's press conference the next morning. "We still don't know exactly what angle she's going to take," Walter cautioned, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. "She could focus on financial irregularities, governance issues, or even make personal accusations. Whatever she throws at us, we need to be prepared to counter it immediately," I said. "Not defensively, but with facts and transparency." Claire, who had been silent for several minutes, looking at something on her laptop, suddenly spoke up. "I think I know what she's planning." All eyes turned to her. "I've been going through old emails between Derek and me," she explained, her voice steady despite the personal pain such a review must have caused. "There's a pattern of him asking questions, seemingly innocent at the time, about various company matters. Executive compensation, board voting procedures, financial reporting protocols." She turned the laptop toward us, displaying a series of email exchanges. "Look at the timing. Each of these questions corresponds with a meeting Jennifer had scheduled with the board member who oversees that particular area." I leaned closer, seeing the pattern Claire had identified. They were gathering information, looking for vulnerabilities or technicalities they could exploit. "Exactly," Claire confirmed. "And there's a clear focus on executive compensation and governance. I think Jennifer is going to claim financial mismanagement, that you've been improperly compensating yourself at the expense of shareholders. The accusation would be baseless. My compensation had always been transparent and approved by the board. But it was the kind of claim that could create damaging headlines and spark unnecessary investigations. That fits with what we know about Harold's involvement, Marcus added. His background in corporate law would be particularly useful for constructing technically accurate but misleading claims about governance procedures. I nodded, a plan forming in my mind. Then we preempt her. First thing tomorrow, before her press conference, we issue a statement announcing a comprehensive review of executive compensation and governance procedures to be conducted by an independent third party. Taking the wind out of her sails, Walter said, nodding appreciatively. It undercuts the impact of her allegations if we're already addressing them proactively. And it makes her look like she's jumping on a bandwagon rather than raising legitimate concerns, Claire added. We continued refining our strategy late into the night, examining every possible angle of attack Jennifer might use and preparing counterarguments supported by facts and documentation. By the time we finished, it was after midnight and exhaustion had settled over the room. As the others departed or headed to guest rooms to catch a few hours of sleep, I found myself alone with Claire in the study. You should get some rest, I told her gently. Tomorrow will be challenging. She nodded, rising from her chair, but instead of leaving, she came around the desk and embraced me tightly. I'm sorry I didn't see it, she whispered. I should have known what Derek was doing, what Jennifer was planning. I returned the embrace, fighting back tears. No, darling, their betrayal isn't your fault. The blame lies entirely with them. When she pulled back, her eyes were damp but determined. We're going to beat them, aren't we, Mom? Yes, I promised, with a certainty I didn't entirely feel. We are. After Claire left for bed, I remained in my study, reviewing our preparations one final time. Everything was in place for the morning. Statements drafted, allies notified, security arranged. Yet despite our thorough planning, a persistent unease gnawed at me. Jennifer had always been clever, always thinking several moves ahead. The press conference felt too obvious, too straightforward for someone who had orchestrated such an elaborate conspiracy. What was I missing? My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number. Elizabeth Pierce, I answered cautiously. Mrs. Pierce. The voice was male, unfamiliar. My name is Detective Michael Reeves with the Mountain County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling about your son-in-law, Derek Pierce. My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. Yes, Detective. Have you found him? Not exactly, the detective replied, his tone carefully neutral. But we've discovered new evidence that changes the nature of our investigation. I need to ask you some questions about your whereabouts yesterday morning. The implication was clear, and a chill ran down my spine. This was the angle I'd missed. Jennifer wasn't just planning to attack my business reputation. She was setting me up to take the fall for Derek's disappearance. I was driving to the cabin to pick up my daughter, I replied truthfully. Why do you ask? A witness reported seeing a vehicle matching the description of yours near the location where Derek's car was found, approximately 2 hours before your daughter reported him missing. It was a lie, of course. I hadn't been anywhere near the cabin until after Claire had called me, but the false witness statement created a narrative that cast suspicion on me, the vengeful mother-in-law eliminating the man who threatened her company. That's impossible, I said firmly. I was at home until Claire called me about Derek's disappearance. I have security footage from my home that can verify this. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I see. And would you be willing to come to the station tomorrow to make a formal statement? Of course, I agreed, though I'll need to bring my attorney, given the nature of these allegations. After ending the call, I sat motionless, the pieces finally falling into place. The press conference was a diversion, designed to keep me occupied while a more sinister plan unfolded. Jennifer wasn't just trying to take my company, she was trying to frame me for Derek's disappearance, possibly even his murder. But where was Derek? Was he truly missing or hiding somewhere, part of the plan to implicate me? I called Marcus immediately, explaining the new development. This complicates things, he said, his voice grim. The police involvement takes this to another level. "We need to find Derek," I said. "If he's in hiding, if this is all staged, we need proof." "I'll put more resources on it," Marcus promised. "But Elizabeth, you should consider postponing the confrontation with Jennifer tomorrow. Walking into that press conference now could be walking into a trap." I considered his advice for a moment, weighing the risks against the necessity of countering Jennifer's narrative. "No," I decided finally, "if I don't show up, it only makes me look guilty." We proceed as planned, but with additional precautions. After hanging up, I reached for the security console on my desk, checking that all the home systems were active and functioning. As I scrolled through the feeds from various cameras positioned around the property, something caught my eye. A shadow moving near the garden gate, too large to be an animal, too deliberate to be caused by wind. I switched to that camera, enhancing the image. A figure dressed in dark clothing was carefully manipulating the lock on the gate, their face obscured by a hood. My first instinct was to call the security team stationed outside, but something held me back. The figure's movements were familiar, the height and build stirring a memory I couldn't immediately place. I watched, breath held, as they successfully bypassed the lock and slipped into the garden, moving with purpose toward the house. As they passed beneath another camera, the hood slipped back momentarily, revealing a glimpse of their face. Ethan, my son, whom I hadn't seen or spoken to in months. Confusion flooded me. What was Ethan doing here, sneaking onto the property in the middle of the night? Had Jennifer recruited him too? Was he another piece in her elaborate chess game against me? I reached for my phone to alert security, then hesitated again. Ethan had always been the quiet one, keeping to himself, staying out of the family business. He had his own life, his own pursuits, far removed from Pierce Enterprises. I had never worried about him the way I had about Claire and Jennifer. Perhaps another parental failing on my part. Decision made, I switched off the alarm for the kitchen door, the one closest to Ethan's approach, and made my way downstairs to intercept him. If he was part of Jennifer's conspiracy, I wanted to face him directly, to understand the full extent of my children's betrayal. The kitchen was dark and silent as I entered, illuminated only by the faint glow of security lights from the garden. I positioned myself near the door, waiting, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and determination. Minutes later, the door handle turned slowly, and Ethan slipped inside, his movements cautious, furtive. He didn't see me at first, his attention focused on navigating the dark room. "Hello, Ethan," I said quietly. He startled violently, spinning toward my voice, eyes wide with alarm. "Mom! Jesus, you scared me!" "I could say the same," I replied, switching on a small lamp that cast the kitchen in a soft glow. Breaking into my house in the middle of the night isn't exactly a conventional visit. Ethan looked different than the last time I'd seen him. Thinner, with dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his posture that spoke of prolonged stress. He glanced nervously at the door behind him, then back to me. "I couldn't risk being seen coming here," he said, his voice low. "Jennifer has people watching the house." The statement sent a chill through me, but I kept my expression neutral. "And how would you know that, Ethan? Are you working with her too?" His face registered shock, then understanding. "You think I'm part of her plan? God, Mum, no, I'm here to warn you." I studied him carefully, searching for signs of deception. Ethan had always been the most difficult of my children to read, his emotions carefully guarded even as a child. "Warn me about what?" He moved further into the kitchen, keeping his voice low. "Jennifer approached me months ago, tried to recruit me. She said you were planning to leave everything to Claire, that the only way to get what was rightfully ours was to work together." The revelation stung, though it shouldn't have surprised me. Of course, Jennifer would try to enlist Ethan in her conspiracy. "And did you believe her?" "At first, maybe," he admitted, looking away. "You and I haven't exactly been close, Mom, and Jennifer, she's always been persuasive when she wants to be." I felt a fresh wave of guilt. Had I neglected Ethan so much that he could believe such lies about me? Had I been so focused on the company, on Claire and Jennifer, that I'd pushed him to the periphery of my attention? "What changed your mind?" I asked. "She started talking about Claire," he said, his expression hardening. "About how she was in the way, how things would be simpler if she wasn't around. That's when I realized this wasn't just about the company. Jennifer was planning something worse." A chill ran through me at the confirmation of my worst fears. "When was this?" "About a week before Claire got sick," Ethan replied, his implication clear. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Claire's mysterious illness, which had defied easy diagnosis and left her weakened for months. Had it been Jennifer's doing? Had she actually poisoned her own sister? "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" I demanded, anger flaring at the thought that Ethan might have known about a threat to Claire and remained silent. "I tried," he insisted. "I called your office 3 times, but Jennifer intercepted the messages. After that, I started watching her, trying to figure out what she was planning. That's how I know about Derek's disappearance." "It's staged, Mum. He's hiding at a property owned by one of Harold's shell companies." "Harold?" I repeated, surprised that Ethan knew about his father's involvement. "You know about him?" Ethan's expression darkened. "Jennifer introduced us about 6 months ago, said he wanted to reconnect, make amends. It was all part of their manipulation, trying to get me to resent you for keeping him away from us all these years. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a picture even more disturbing than I had imagined. Jennifer's plan had been in motion for longer than I realized, entangling all of us in a web of lies and resentment. "Derek is alive then?" I asked, redirecting the conversation to the immediate threat. Ethan nodded. "Very much so. The whole disappearance is a setup, designed to implicate you when his body is found. They've even got blood evidence they're planning to plant at your property upstate." My blood ran cold at the methodical nature of the plan. "And tomorrow's press conference?" "A distraction," Ethan confirmed. "While everyone's attention is on Jennifer and her accusations against you, their associates will be placing the evidence that will lead police to arrest you for Derek's murder." It was clever, diabolically so. With me in jail facing murder charges, the board would have no choice but to remove me from leadership. The company would be vulnerable, Claire devastated and distracted. Jennifer could step in as the grieving sister and widow, the natural choice to stabilize the family business. "Where is Derek now?" I asked, my mind already formulating a counter-strategy. "A cabin about 3 hours north of here," Ethan said. "I've been tracking him for days. That's why I couldn't contact you earlier. I needed to be sure of his location before I risked approaching you." I studied my son's face, seeing in it a determination and loyalty I had failed to recognize before. While I had been focused on Jennifer's betrayal and Claire's vulnerability, Ethan had been quietly working to protect the family, operating in the shadows just as effectively as Jennifer, but with opposite intentions. "We need to move quickly," I said, making a decision. "If what you're saying is true, we have only hours before they put their plan in motion." "What are you thinking?" Ethan asked, a new alertness in his posture. "I'm thinking it's time we turn the tables on your sister," I replied, a strategy already forming in my mind. "But first, we need to find Derek and make sure he can't disappear for real once we expose the ruse." Ethan nodded, a hint of a smile playing at his lips, an expression so reminiscent of his childhood that it made my heart ache with renewed determination. "I'm with you, Mum. Whatever you need." "Then let's get to work," I said, leading him toward my study. "We have a long night ahead of us and a family to save. What's left of it, anyway." As we climbed the stairs, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Grief for the daughter I had lost to her own ambition, pride in the son who had found his way back to us, and a steely resolve to protect Claire and the legacy I had built. The battle lines had been drawn more clearly now, and with Ethan's help, we finally had a chance to get ahead of Jennifer's machinations. The storm was gathering strength, but for the first time in days, I felt prepared to weather it. Jennifer had underestimated me once by thinking I wouldn't discover her plot. Now she had underestimated the family bonds that remained intact, despite her best efforts to destroy them. That would be her final mistake. Chapter 5. Countermoves. Dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose that belied the darkness of our situation. Ethan and I had worked through the night, piecing together the extent of Jennifer's conspiracy and formulating our response. Claire had joined us around 3 a.m., unable to sleep and unwilling to be left out of the planning. The three of us, huddled around my study desk with maps and documents spread before us, felt like generals preparing for battle. "Let me get this straight," Claire said, her voice steady despite the shock of learning about Ethan's suspicions regarding her illness. Jennifer and Derek staged his disappearance to frame Mom for murder, while simultaneously planning to make accusations about financial mismanagement at the press conference. Ethan nodded grimly. "The press conference is just the first act. While Mom is publicly defending herself against Jennifer's accusations, their associates will be planting evidence at the upstate property, Derek's blood, personal effects that would suggest he was killed there. And the police are already asking questions about my whereabouts," I added. "It's a carefully constructed trap. If we don't move quickly, I could be arrested by this evening." Claire's face hardened with resolve. "Then we need to find Derek first. Bring him in. Force him to admit the deception." "It's not that simple," Ethan cautioned. "The cabin where he's hiding is remote, and they'll have security, people working for Harold who are being paid well to keep Derek's location secret." "Then we bring in the police," Claire suggested. "Tell them everything we know." I shook my head. Without concrete evidence, it would be our word against theirs. Jennifer has been careful. Most of the conspiracy has been conducted verbally, with minimal electronic trail, and they've had months to fabricate evidence supporting their version of events. "So what's our plan?" Claire asked, looking between Ethan and me. I stood up, moving to the window where the first rays of sunlight were beginning to illuminate the garden. "We split up. Ethan, you take Marcus and 2 of his most trusted men to the cabin. Your goal is to document Derek's presence there and, if possible, obtain evidence of the conspiracy. Photographs, recordings, anything that proves he's alive and in hiding." Ethan nodded, accepting the assignment without hesitation. "Claire and I will attend Jennifer's press conference as planned," I continued. "We'll counter her accusations with the evidence we've already prepared, playing our part to keep her occupied and unaware that we're onto the bigger plot." "And what about Harold?" Claire asked. "Where does he fit into today's events?" I turned back to face my children, noting the way the morning light illuminated their features, so similar despite their different personalities. "According to what we know, Harold will be coordinating from behind the scenes. He won't show his face publicly. That would raise too many questions about his sudden return and involvement." "I might be able to find him," Ethan offered. "After we secure evidence of Derek's location, I can track Harold through the channels I've been monitoring." "No," I said firmly. "Your priority is Derek. Harold is—" I hesitated, still struggling with the painful reality of my ex-husband's betrayal after so many years. "Harold is a secondary concern for now." The truth was, I wasn't sure what I would do when faced with Harold again. Our confrontation at the Meridian had been brief, overshadowed by the more immediate threat posed by Jennifer and Derek. But his willingness to conspire against me, to use our daughters as pawns in his game of revenge or greed, stirred a rage in me that I could barely contain. "We should get moving," Claire suggested, glancing at her watch. "Jennifer's press conference is scheduled for 10 a.m. That gives us less than 4 hours to prepare." I nodded, pulling myself back to the immediate concerns. "Ethan, coordinate with Marcus. Take whatever resources you need, but be careful. If they spot you approaching the cabin, they might move Derek or, worse, decide to make his disappearance real." Ethan's expression was grim as he stood. "I'll be careful. And Mom?" He hesitated, something vulnerable flickering across his face. "I'm sorry I didn't come to you sooner. I should have trusted you from the beginning." The apology touched me deeply, reminding me of the little boy who had always been so eager to please, so desperate for approval. "You're here now," I said softly. "That's what matters." After Ethan left to meet with Marcus, Claire and I focused on preparing for the press conference. Walter arrived at 7 a.m. with final drafts of our statements and a briefing on potential legal questions that might arise. "The key is to stay calm and factual," he advised as we reviewed the materials. "Jennifer will try to provoke an emotional response to make you appear unstable or vindictive. Don't give her that satisfaction." "I've been dealing with hostile takeovers for 30 years, Walter," I reminded him with a thin smile. "I know how to keep my composure." "This is different," he countered gently. "This isn't just business, it's personal, deeply so, and Jennifer knows exactly which buttons to push." He was right, of course. Jennifer had been my daughter for 32 years. She knew my weaknesses, my triggers, my vulnerabilities in a way that no business adversary ever could. And she wouldn't hesitate to exploit that knowledge. "I'll be fine," I insisted, more to convince myself than Walter. Claire, who had been silently reviewing the press statements, looked up with concern. "Mum, are you sure you want to do this? I could handle the press conference alone, give you time to focus on the Derek situation." The offer was tempting. Part of me wanted nothing more than to avoid the public confrontation with Jennifer, to work from the shadows as Ethan was doing. But I knew that was exactly what Jennifer would expect. For me to hide, to delegate, to distance myself from the accusations. "No," I said firmly. "We do this together as we planned. Jennifer needs to see that her attempts to divide us have failed." Claire nodded, a small smile of approval warming her face. "Together then." At 9 a.m. we received the first text from Ethan. "Arrived near location, conducting surveillance. We'll update when we have visual confirmation." The message was deliberately vague, containing no specific names or details in case our communications were being monitored. But it was enough to know that Ethan and Marcus's team had reached the vicinity of the cabin where Derek was supposedly hiding. "Time to get ready," I told Claire, setting aside my phone. "We should arrive early, secure good positions, make it clear we're not intimidated." As we prepared to leave, dressed in matching shades of steel grey like armour for the battle ahead, my phone rang with an unknown number. Cautious after the previous night's call from the detective, I answered with a guarded, "Elizabeth Pierce." "Mrs. Pierce, this is Dr. Robert Chen again." The familiar voice of Claire's physician sent a wave of relief through me. "I've been reviewing Claire's medical records, as you requested, looking for any anomalies during her illness." I had asked him to investigate after Ethan's revelation about Jennifer's possible involvement in Claire's mysterious sickness, though I hadn't shared my full suspicions with the doctor. "Did you find anything?" I asked, moving away from Claire to a more private corner of the room. "Yes," he replied, his voice grave. "There were several inconsistencies in her blood work that didn't align with her symptoms. At the time, we attributed it to an unusual viral response, but in light of your concerns..." He paused. "Mrs. Pierce, the patterns are consistent with low-level arsenic poisoning. The confirmation of my worst fears made my knees weak." "You're certain?" "As certain as I can be without running new tests," Dr. Chen confirmed. "The levels weren't high enough to be immediately life-threatening, but they were sufficient to cause the symptoms Claire experienced: fatigue, nausea, the cognitive difficulties." I closed my eyes, fighting back a wave of nausea at the thought that Jennifer had systematically poisoned her own sister. "Thank you, Doctor. Please document your findings and send them to my attorney, Walter Green. His contact information is in Claire's file as her secondary legal representative." After hanging up, I took a moment to compose myself before rejoining Claire. The knowledge that Jennifer had not just betrayed us, but had actively harmed Claire, could have killed her if the poisoning had continued, filled me with a cold rage that threatened to overwhelm my carefully maintained control. "Everything okay?" Claire asked as I returned, her perceptive gaze noting the tension in my posture. "Fine," I lied, unwilling to burden her with this additional horror before the press conference. "Just last-minute details with security." She didn't look convinced, but didn't press the issue. "The car's waiting," she said instead. "We should go." The drive to the Guardian Hotel, where Jennifer had scheduled her press conference, was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts. Claire stared out the window at the passing city, her profile etched with determination, despite the emotional turmoil she must have been feeling. I studied legal documents, reviewing key points for the inevitable questions about company finances and governance. My phone vibrated with another text from Ethan. Visual confirmation obtained. Target is present and appears unharmed, proceeding with documentation. Relief washed over me. Derek was at the cabin, just as Ethan had predicted. Now we just needed evidence, proof that his disappearance was staged, that Jennifer and her conspirators were attempting to frame me for a crime that never occurred. As our car pulled up to the Guardian, we were met with a flurry of media activity. News vans lined the street, reporters and camera crews jostling for position near the entrance. Word had clearly spread that this wasn't just another corporate announcement, but something more salacious. "Ready?" I asked Claire as our driver opened the door. She squared her shoulders, a gesture so reminiscent of myself that it momentarily took my breath away. "Ready!" We stepped out together, immediately enveloped in a cacophony of shouted questions and camera flashes. "Mrs. Pierce, are you aware of your daughter's press conference today? Claire, how do you feel about your husband's disappearance? Is it true the company is facing financial irregularities?" We moved through the chaos with practiced composure, neither acknowledging nor responding to the questions. Security personnel from Pierce Enterprises, arranged in advance by Marcus, formed a protective corridor guiding us into the hotel lobby. Inside, the scene was slightly more controlled, though no less tense. Hotel staff directed us toward the grand ballroom, where Jennifer's press conference was scheduled to take place. As we approached, I caught sight of Thomas Blackwood standing near the entrance, deep in conversation with Martin Reynolds. Both men froze when they saw us, guilt and surprise flashing across their faces. "Elizabeth," Thomas began, stepping forward with a conciliatory gesture, "I didn't expect—" "Save it, Thomas," I cut him off coldly. "We'll discuss your betrayal at the next board meeting, assuming you have the courage to attend." His face reddened, but he made no reply as Claire and I swept past him into the ballroom. The large room was already filling with journalists, financial analysts, and what appeared to be carefully placed supporters of Jennifer's faction. A podium stood at the front, flanked by the Pierce Enterprises logo, a detail that heightened my anger. She was using company resources for her personal vendetta. "There," Claire murmured, nodding toward a side entrance where Jennifer had just appeared, surrounded by a small entourage that included Eliza Chen and two men I recognized as junior executives from the company's financial department. Jennifer hadn't noticed us yet. She was reviewing notes with one of her associates, her expression focused and confident. She wore a pristine white suit, a deliberate choice, I was sure, to contrast with the darkness of the accusations she planned to make against me. "Let's take seats in the front row," I suggested to Claire. "I want her to see us the moment she steps up to that podium." We moved forward, our presence finally registering with several journalists who immediately began whispering among themselves. By the time we reached the front row and sat down, a ripple of awareness had spread through the room, all eyes darting between Jennifer and us. Jennifer looked up, alerted by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Her gaze locked with mine across the room, and for a brief moment her composure faltered. She clearly hadn't expected us to attend, to confront her so directly, but she recovered quickly, her expression hardening into the cold mask of determination I had seen at the Meridian. My phone vibrated in my pocket, another message from Ethan. "Evidence secured, photos and video of target. Also obtained audio of phone conversation with Jay discussing the plan. Returning to city now." A surge of triumph coursed through me. We had what we needed, proof that Derek was alive, evidence of the conspiracy. Now it was just a matter of withstanding Jennifer's public attack long enough for Ethan to return with the documentation. At precisely 10 a.m., Jennifer approached the podium, her steps measured, her chin held high. The room fell silent, tension hanging in the air like an electrical charge before a storm. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and confident. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I've called this press conference to address serious concerns regarding the leadership and financial practices at Pierce Enterprises." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room before settling on me with a look of practiced regret. "It is not easy for me to stand here today. Pierce Enterprises has been my family's legacy for decades, built by my mother into one of the country's most respected companies. But legacy and blood ties cannot excuse impropriety or protect shareholders from mismanagement." I maintained a neutral expression, meeting her gaze steadily, refusing to show any reaction to her opening salvo. "Over the past year," Jennifer continued, "I have become aware of troubling patterns within the company's executive compensation structure and financial reporting practices. Decisions have been made that prioritize the personal enrichment of certain individuals over the long-term health of the company and the interests of its shareholders." She began detailing a series of allegations: manipulation of performance metrics to increase executive bonuses, concealment of underperforming assets in quarterly reports, conflicts of interest in vendor selection. Each claim was carefully constructed to contain a kernel of truth wrapped in layers of misleading interpretation and outright fabrication. I listened without visible reaction, though internally I was cataloguing each accusation, noting how they aligned with the information Derek had been soliciting from Claire over the past months. The evidence of their conspiracy was woven through every word Jennifer spoke. "These practices cannot continue," Jennifer declared, her voice rising with practiced indignation. "As a significant shareholder and someone who cares deeply about this company's future, I am calling for an immediate independent audit of all financial records, a review of the current leadership structure, and appropriate action from the board of directors to address these serious concerns." She paused, her gaze pointedly meeting mine. "And in light of recent personal events, the troubling disappearance of my brother-in-law, Derek Pierce, I believe it is in the best interest of the company that Elizabeth Pierce step down from her position as CEO until these matters are resolved." The room erupted in a flurry of questions and exclamations. Journalists half rose from their seats, cameras flashed, and the background murmur swelled to a cacophony of voices. Jennifer raised a hand, calling for silence. "I will take questions shortly," she promised. "But first, I'd like to address another matter, one that pains me deeply as a daughter and a sister." My phone vibrated again, but I couldn't check it without drawing attention. Whatever Ethan was trying to tell me would have to wait. Jennifer was moving to the next phase of her attack, and I needed to be fully present. "Many of you know that my sister, Claire, has been recovering from a serious illness," Jennifer continued, her voice softening with what sounded like genuine concern. "What you may not know is that her condition has left her vulnerable to manipulation and undue influence, particularly from our mother, who has always controlled Claire's access to company matters." Claire stiffened beside me, her hands curling into fists in her lap. The implication was clear. Jennifer was suggesting that I had manipulated Claire during her illness, positioned her as a puppet CEO while maintaining control from the shadows. "I have tried for months to address these concerns privately," Jennifer went on, the picture of reluctant whistleblower. "But my efforts have been met with resistance, denial, and increasingly concerning behavior. And now, with Derek missing under suspicious circumstances, I felt I had no choice but to bring these matters to public attention." It was masterfully done. Jennifer had presented herself as the concerned daughter and sister, forced by conscience and circumstances to take a stand against corruption and potential criminality. She had woven together the business allegations and personal insinuations into a narrative that cast me as both corrupt executive and potentially dangerous matriarch. She finished her prepared remarks and opened the floor to questions. Hands shot up around the room, journalists clamoring to dig deeper into the sensational claims. "Jennifer," called a reporter from the financial press, "can you provide specific examples of the financial irregularities you've alleged?" She nodded gravely. "There are numerous instances, but perhaps the most concerning is the executive compensation structure established last year, which included performance bonuses tied to metrics that were manipulated to ensure maximum payout, regardless of actual company performance. It was a distortion of the truth. The compensation structure had been thoroughly vetted by independent consultants and approved unanimously by the board, including Jennifer herself. The metrics were standard for the industry and had actually resulted in lower bonuses than projected due to missed targets in certain divisions." Before she could continue, I rose from my seat, my movement immediately drawing all eyes in the room. "If I may address that specific allegation," I said, my voice calm, but carrying easily through the now silent ballroom. Jennifer looked momentarily flustered by my interruption. "This isn't your press conference, Mother." "No," I agreed pleasantly, "but since it's my company and my integrity being questioned, I believe I have the right to respond." Without waiting for her permission, I moved toward the side of the podium, positioning myself where I could address both Jennifer and the assembled press. Claire followed, standing slightly behind me in a show of solidarity. The executive compensation structure Ms. Pierce refers to was developed by independent consultants, reviewed by the Compensation Committee, of which Jennifer is a member, and approved unanimously by the board last March. All performance metrics were standard industry benchmarks, verified by our external auditors, and the results were published in our annual report. I glanced at Jennifer, whose expression had hardened into a mask of barely contained anger. "As for the insinuation that my daughter Claire has been manipulated during her illness, I think she can speak for herself on that matter." I stepped aside, allowing Claire to take my place. She moved forward with confidence, her posture straight, her gaze direct as she surveyed the room. "I want to thank my sister for her concern about my health," Claire began, her voice steady with only the slightest edge of sarcasm. "But I assure you, my illness has not affected my judgment or my ability to understand what's happening within our company." She paused, looking directly at Jennifer. "In fact, it's given me greater clarity about many things, including who I can trust and who I cannot." The tension between the sisters was palpable, a crackling energy that held the room spellbound. "As for my husband's disappearance," Claire continued, her voice remarkably steady considering the personal pain behind her words, "I am as concerned as anyone, but I reject any implication that my mother is somehow involved. Such accusations are not only baseless, but deeply hurtful during what is already a difficult time for our family." A journalist from the back of the room called out, "Claire, are you saying you don't share your sister's concerns about the company's financial practices?" Claire turned toward the voice, her response immediate and firm. "I'm saying that Pierce Enterprises has always operated with the highest standards of financial transparency and corporate governance. Any suggestion otherwise is simply untrue." "Then why would your sister make these allegations?" another reporter pressed. Before Claire could answer, I stepped forward again. "Perhaps that's a question best directed to Jennifer herself. Why now? Why in this public forum, rather than through the established channels of corporate governance?" I turned to face Jennifer directly, watching as she struggled to maintain her composure under this unexpected counterattack. We had thrown her off script, confronting her allegations head-on rather than defensively as she had anticipated. "In fact," I continued, "I find the timing of these accusations particularly interesting, given that our internal audit team recently uncovered evidence of significant financial irregularities. Specifically, embezzlement of company funds through a sophisticated scheme of falsified invoices and offshore accounts." Jennifer's face paled visibly, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the edges of the podium. "We have, of course, reported these findings to the appropriate authorities," I added, the lie smooth and calculated. We hadn't yet involved the authorities, but Jennifer wouldn't know that. And we are cooperating fully with their investigation. The room erupted again, journalists firing questions from all directions. In the chaos, I felt my phone vibrate once more. This time, I discreetly checked the message while attention was focused on the shouting match developing between reporters. Ethan's text was brief but alarming. Police at upstate property. Someone tipped them off early. Evidence being planted now. Need more time. The trap was being sprung sooner than we'd anticipated. Jennifer's press conference wasn't just a diversion, it was a countdown. Once the police discovered the planted evidence at my property, they would move to arrest me, regardless of the statements I was making here. I needed to buy time to keep this circus going until Ethan could return with the evidence proving Derek was alive and the disappearance was staged. As if reading my thoughts, Jennifer seized control of the situation, raising her voice above the clamor. These are serious allegations, Mother, and a transparent attempt to deflect from your own misconduct. If there was evidence of embezzlement, why hasn't the board been informed? Why haven't charges been filed? The investigation is ongoing, I replied smoothly. The board will be fully briefed at the appropriate time, once all the facts have been established. Convenient, Jennifer scoffed. Just as it's convenient that you've shown up here today to disrupt these proceedings and prevent me from presenting my concerns in full. On the contrary, I countered, Claire and I are here precisely because we believe in transparency and accountability. We welcome scrutiny of our leadership and our company's practices. In fact, I paused, making a show of checking my watch. We've scheduled our own press conference for noon today to announce a comprehensive independent review of all company governance procedures and financial practices. This was improvisation, a desperate attempt to extend the public confrontation and delay whatever was happening at my upstate property. From Jennifer's expression, I could see she was calculating, trying to determine if this was a bluff or a genuine countermove. In the meantime, I continued, addressing the journalist directly, I'd like to address some of the specific allegations my daughter has raised, point by point, with the factual context she has conveniently omitted. For the next 20 minutes, I methodically dismantled Jennifer's accusations, providing detailed explanations of the financial decisions she had questioned and contextualizing them within standard industry practices. Claire occasionally interjected with additional information, particularly regarding board decisions in which she had been directly involved. Throughout our impromptu rebuttal, I watched Jennifer's expression shift from surprise to frustration to barely contained fury. This wasn't how her press conference was supposed to go. We were supposed to be caught off guard, defensive, scrambling to contain the damage. Instead, we had turned the tables, presenting a united front and challenging her narrative directly. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Ethan. ETA 20 minutes. Have video evidence. Derek on camera discussing frame-up with Jay. Relief surged through me. 20 minutes. I just needed to keep this going for 20 more minutes. As I concluded my response to the final allegation, Jennifer stepped forward, reclaiming the podium with a forceful gesture. While I appreciate my mother's detailed explanations, she said, her voice tight with suppressed anger, they don't address the underlying concerns about the concentration of power within Pierce Enterprises and the lack of independent oversight. She turned to face me directly, abandoning the pretense of addressing the press. This isn't just about financial practices, Mother. It's about your control, your need to dominate every aspect of the company and the family. It's about how you've always favored Claire, positioned her as your successor, while pushing me to the sidelines despite my qualifications and contributions. The personal attack caught me off guard. This wasn't part of her prepared narrative. This was raw emotion breaking through the carefully constructed facade, revealing the true motivation behind her betrayal. Jennifer, I began, my voice softening despite myself. If that's how you felt, why didn't you come to me? We could have discussed your role in the company, your concerns about succession. Discussed, she interrupted with a bitter laugh. "You've never discussed anything, Mother. You dictate, you decide. The rest of us just have to fall in line or get pushed aside." The room had gone silent, the journalists sensing that they were witnessing something beyond corporate politics, a family drama playing out before their eyes. "That's not true," Claire interjected, stepping forward to stand beside me. "Mom has always listened to both of us. She's always valued our input, our ideas." "Your input, maybe," Jennifer shot back, her composure crumbling further. "You were always the golden child, weren't you, Claire? Always so perfect, so beloved. Do you have any idea what it's like to live in your shadow? To always be the other daughter, the one who was never quite good enough?" Claire looked genuinely shocked by the venom in her sister's voice. "Jennifer, I never knew you felt that way. I never tried to—" "Of course you didn't know," Jennifer cut her off. "You were too busy basking in Mother's approval, too comfortable in your position as the chosen one to notice anything else." The press conference had devolved completely now, transforming from a calculated corporate attack into a raw family confrontation. Journalists were frantically taking notes, cameras rolling to capture every moment of the unfolding drama. I stepped between my daughters, an instinctive attempt to mediate even in these extraordinary circumstances. "This isn't the place for this conversation, Jennifer. Whatever grievances you have, whatever pain you're carrying, we should discuss it privately, as a family." "There is no family," she hissed, her voice low enough that only Claire and I could hear. "Not anymore. You made sure of that when you chose her over me, again and again." Before I could respond, the ballroom doors burst open with a crash that made everyone turn. Ethan stood in the doorway, slightly breathless, Marcus at his side. In his hand, he held a tablet, its screen illuminated. "Sorry to interrupt," he announced, striding forward with purpose, "but I think everyone here should see this before things go any further." Jennifer's eyes widened in alarm as she recognized her brother. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" He ignored her, moving to the front of the room where a technician managed the audio-visual equipment for the press conference. After a brief exchange, the large screen behind the podium flickered to life, connected to Ethan's tablet. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," Ethan addressed the room, his voice steady and clear. "Before my sister continues her allegations, there's something you should know about her husband-in-law's alleged disappearance." The screen displayed an image of a rustic cabin surrounded by trees, clearly taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Then the image changed to show Derek, very much alive, sitting on the cabin's porch with a phone to his ear. The timestamp in the corner showed that it had been taken less than 3 hours ago. A murmur rippled through the assembled journalists as the implications became clear. "Derek Pierce isn't missing," Ethan announced. "He's hiding, as part of a conspiracy to frame my mother for his supposed murder." Jennifer lunged for the technician's controls, but Marcus blocked her path, his imposing presence enough to make her hesitate. "And here's the proof," Ethan continued, tapping his tablet. The screen now displayed video footage, clearly taken through a window of the cabin. Derek was pacing inside, speaking animatedly on his phone. The audio was slightly muffled, but audible enough for the key phrases to be heard clearly. "Evidence will be planted today. Police already suspect her. Once she's arrested, the board will have no choice." Jennifer's face had gone completely white. Her composure finally shattered as she watched her carefully constructed plot unravel in real time. "That's not all," Ethan added, swiping to a new video clip. This one showed Derek speaking directly to someone off-camera, his words chillingly clear. "Jennifer says we need to be patient. Once Elizabeth is in custody and Claire is isolated, everything falls into place. The company, the inheritance, all of it." The room erupted in chaos as journalists scrambled to process this shocking turn of events. Questions flew from all directions, cameras swiveled between Ethan, Jennifer and me, capturing every reaction for the evening news. In the midst of the pandemonium, I caught Jennifer's eye across the room. For a brief moment, I saw something flicker in her gaze. Not just defeat or anger, but a deep, wounded pain that reached back far beyond this day, this conspiracy. Then the moment passed, and her expression hardened into cold fury. She turned abruptly and pushed her way through the crowd toward the side exit, ignoring the shouted questions that followed her. I made no move to stop her. There would be time for confrontations later, for legal consequences and family reckonings. For now, it was enough that her plot had been exposed, that Claire was safe, that the truth was finally emerging from the shadows. Ethan made his way to Claire and me, the three of us forming an instinctive circle of solidarity amidst the chaotic room. "Perfect timing," I told him, pride swelling in my voice. "How did you get back so quickly?" "Helicopter," he replied with a small smile. "Marcus has some interesting connections." My phone rang. Walter, my attorney. "Elizabeth," he said when I answered, his voice urgent. "The police are at your upstate property. They've found blood evidence and what appears to be Derek's personal items. Tell them to check the DNA immediately," I instructed, "and inform them that Derek Pierce has just been proven to be alive and well. There's video evidence being broadcast to the press as we speak." After hanging up, I turned to Claire, concerned about how she was processing these rapid developments. Her face was pale but composed, her eyes clear and focused. "Are you all right?" I asked softly, taking her hand in mine. She nodded, squeezing my hand in return. "I will be, it's just a lot to absorb. Derek, Jennifer, all of it." "I know, darling," I said, wishing I could shield her from the pain of these betrayals. "But we'll get through it together." As the three of us made our way toward the exit, reporters continuing to shout questions that we ignored, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Relief that the immediate danger had passed, sorrow for the daughter I had lost to her own resentment, and a cautious hope for what might be rebuilt from the wreckage of our family. The battle wasn't over. Jennifer was still free, her co-conspirators still at large, the legal and corporate ramifications of their plot still to be resolved. But for the first time in days, I felt the momentum shift, the balance of power tipping back in our favor. Outside the hotel, in the bright light of midday, Claire suddenly turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Mum, what Jennifer said in there about always feeling overlooked, living in my shadow, was that true? Did I do that to her?" I considered the question carefully, thinking back over years of family dynamics, of choices made and priorities set. "I don't know," I admitted finally. "Perhaps in some ways we all failed to see what she needed, what she was feeling. But Jennifer made her choices, Claire. She chose betrayal over honesty, manipulation over conversation. That's not on you." Claire nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "Still, I can't help wondering if things could have been different, if we'd somehow seen the signs earlier." "We can't change the past," Ethan interjected gently, "but we can decide what happens next, how we move forward from here." As our car arrived to take us back to my home, I glanced back at the Guardian Hotel, thinking of Jennifer somewhere inside, her carefully constructed plans in ruins, her future now uncertain. Despite everything she had done, everything she had planned to do, a part of me still ached for the daughter I had raised, for the family that might have been. But Ethan was right. We couldn't change what had happened, the betrayals, the lies, the broken trust. We could only decide what came next. And as I slid into the car beside my two children, who had stood with me against the storm, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, our bonds strengthened by the fire we had just endured. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Now it was time to secure our victory and begin the long process of healing the wounds that remained. Chapter 6, Aftermath. 3 weeks after the disastrous press conference, I stood at the window of my office, watching the city lights flicker to life as dusk settled over the skyline. The view had always brought me comfort, a visual reminder of the empire I had built from nothing. Tonight, however, my thoughts were elsewhere, on family rather than fortune, on healing rather than ambition. The aftermath of Jennifer's exposed conspiracy had unfolded with dizzying speed. Derek had been arrested at the cabin less than 2 hours after Ethan's dramatic intervention at the press conference. He'd crumbled immediately under questioning, desperate to save himself by implicating others. His detailed confession had led to the arrests of several co-conspirators, including Eliza Chen and, most painfully, Harold. My ex-husband had maintained his composure even as he was led away in handcuffs. His only words to me are cryptic, "I never wanted it to go this far." Whether that was truth or just another manipulation, I would likely never know. Jennifer, however, had vanished. She'd slipped away during the chaos at the hotel, and despite extensive efforts by law enforcement, she remained at large. The authorities believed she had fled the country using false identification, arranged before the conspiracy imploded. Further evidence of her meticulous contingency planning. Part of me was relieved she had escaped immediate arrest. Despite everything she had done, the thought of my daughter in prison was almost unbearable. Another part knew that her absence meant our family story remained unfinished. The final confrontation merely postponed rather than avoided. A soft knock at my office door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, turning from the window. Claire entered, dressed in a simple black dress, her hair pulled back in a neat chignon. In the weeks since the revelations about Derek and Jennifer, she had transformed, not just emotionally but physically as well. The lingering effects of her illness had faded completely, her strength returning with remarkable speed once the subtle poisoning had stopped. "The car's ready," she said, her voice gentle but steady. "Ethan's already downstairs." I nodded, gathering my coat and purse. Today marked another milestone in our family's painful journey, Derek's sentencing hearing. He had pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for his testimony against the other conspirators, but he would still face significant prison time for his role in the plot. "Are you sure you want to be there?" I asked Claire, not for the first time. "No one would blame you for staying away." She offered a small, sad smile. "I need to see it through, Mom. For closure, if nothing else." In the elevator descending to the lobby, I studied my daughter's profile, marveling at her resilience. The betrayal by her husband and sister had been devastating, yet she had faced it with a dignity and strength that humbled me. There were moments of breakdown, of course, nights when I had held her as she sobbed, days when anger overtook her usual composure. But she was healing, finding her way forward one difficult step at a time. Ethan waited for us in the lobby, his tall figure a reassuring presence. He had remained in the city after the conspiracy unraveled, taking an extended leave from his own life to help us navigate the aftermath. In the process, he had begun to carve out a new role for himself within both the family and the company. "Ready?" he asked simply as we approached. Claire nodded, and the three of us walked together to the waiting car, a united front as we had been since that fateful press conference. The courthouse was crowded with journalists and curious onlookers, drawn by the salacious details of family betrayal that had emerged during the legal proceedings. We moved through them silently, ignoring shouted questions and the constant click of cameras. Inside the courtroom, we took seats in the front row, directly behind the prosecution table. Minutes later, Derek was led in, handcuffed and wearing a prison jumpsuit that hung loose on his frame. He had lost weight during his pre-trial detention, his once handsome face now gaunt and shadowed. His eyes found Claire immediately, a mixture of shame and pleading in his gaze. She met his look steadily, her expression neither angry nor forgiving, simply present, witnessing this moment of accountability. The proceedings were brief. The judge reviewed the plea agreement, recited the charges to which Derek had admitted guilt, and then delivered the sentence. 8 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 5, contingent upon his continued cooperation in the cases against his co-conspirators. As the sentence was pronounced, I felt Claire tense beside me. I reached for her hand, finding it cold but steady. On her other side, Ethan placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. The three of us, bound not just by blood, but by the shared experience of weathering Jennifer's betrayal, drew strength from one another's presence. When it was over, when Derek had been led away for the last time, we exited the courthouse through a private entrance arranged by Walter to avoid the media circus at the main doors. In the car heading back to my home, Claire finally spoke. 8 years, she said quietly. It seems both too much and not enough somehow. I know, I replied, understanding exactly what she meant. No prison sentence could truly address the personal betrayal, the broken vows, the shattered trust. Yet, measured against what might have happened, Claire continuing to be poisoned, me imprisoned for a murder that never occurred, Jennifer seizing control of everything we had built, it seemed almost lenient. Have there been any new leads on Jennifer? Ethan asked, changing the subject slightly. I shook my head. Nothing concrete. The last possible sighting was in Singapore 2 weeks ago, but it couldn't be confirmed. The conversation lapsed into silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts about the daughter and sister who had orchestrated such elaborate harm against her own family. What drove such betrayal? Was it really just resentment over perceived favoritism? Or was there something deeper, some fundamental darkness in Jennifer that we had never recognized? Back at my home, as we shared a quiet dinner in the kitchen rather than the formal dining room, Claire suddenly set down her fork and looked at me intently. "I've been thinking about the company," she said, "about the future." I nodded, encouraging her to continue. "The shareholders' meeting is next week. We need to present a clear succession plan, a vision that reassures everyone after all this turmoil." "I've prepared a statement," I confirmed, "reaffirming your position as heir apparent, with a 5-year transition timeline before I step down completely." Claire exchanged a glance with Ethan before responding. "Actually, I've been talking with Ethan, and we have a different proposal." I raised an eyebrow, curious about this unexpected development. "Go on." "We think the company would be stronger with shared leadership," Claire explained. "Ethan focusing on innovation and new market development, me overseeing operations and client relationships, both of us reporting to you until you're ready to step back." The proposal surprised me. Ethan had always kept his distance from Pierce Enterprises, pursuing his own interests rather than joining the family business. And Claire had been groomed as my sole successor since she finished business school. "Ethan," I prompted, turning to my son, "this is quite a change of direction for you." He nodded, a hint of his old shyness evident in his posture. "These past weeks have made me reassess a lot of things, Mom. My priorities, my place in the family. I've realized I want to be part of what you've built, to help protect and grow it alongside Claire." There was something more in his eyes, an unspoken acknowledgement of how Jennifer's betrayal had shaped his decision. In the vacuum left by her treachery, he had found a new purpose, a way to help heal the wounds inflicted on our family and our legacy. "I think it's an excellent idea," I said finally, surprising myself with how right it felt. The two of you balance each other perfectly. Claire's strategic vision complemented by Ethan's creative approach. Relief and pleasure spread across both their faces. And for a moment, just a moment, the shadow of Jennifer's betrayal seemed less oppressive, the path forward more clearly illuminated. Later that evening, after Claire and Ethan had retired to their rooms, I found myself once again drawn to the window of my study, gazing out at the city that had been both backdrop and stage for my life's work. So much had changed in the span of a few weeks. Relationships destroyed and strengthened, plans upended, futures redirected. Despite the pain, despite the betrayal that had cut to the very heart of our family, I found myself looking toward the future with cautious hope. Claire was healing, finding strength in the very crucible that might have broken a lesser spirit. Ethan had returned to the fold, bringing with him fresh energy and perspective that the company sorely needed. And I was learning to move forward with a new understanding of both my achievements and my failures. The family I had fought so hard to build, to protect, had been irreparably altered. Jennifer's absence was a wound that would never fully heal, a question without resolution. Had I failed her somehow? Had I been blind to her needs, her pain, in ways that contributed to the path she eventually chose? These questions would haunt me, I knew, for the rest of my days. Yet, even in this uncertainty, this grief for what was lost, I found a measure of peace in what remained. The children who had stood with me against the storm, the legacy that would continue through them in ways I hadn't anticipated. My phone chimed softly, alerting me to an incoming email. I glanced at the screen, my heart stuttering when I saw the sender was listed simply as J. With trembling fingers, I opened the message. There was no text, only an image attached, a photograph of Jennifer, her face partially obscured by large sunglasses, standing on what appeared to be a tropical beach. The timestamp showed it had been taken just hours ago. It was a message without words, yet its meaning was clear. I am free. I am beyond your reach. This story isn't over. I stared at the image for a long moment, a complex mixture of emotions washing over me. Relief that she was alive, anger at her continued defiance, a persistent ache of maternal love that refused to die despite everything she had done. Finally, I closed the email without responding. Jennifer had made her choice, charted her course away from the family she had tried to destroy. Whatever came next, whether further attempts at revenge or, less likely, some journey toward redemption, would unfold in its own time. For now, my focus needed to be on healing what remained, on building something new from the fragments of what had been broken, on protecting Claire and supporting Ethan as they stepped into their new roles, on ensuring that Pierce Enterprises not only survived this crisis, but emerged stronger, more resilient. The empire I had built had weathered its greatest threat, not from external competitors or market forces, but from within, from the daughter I had raised but never truly known. The wounds of that betrayal would leave scars, permanent reminders of how even the closest bonds could be corrupted by resentment and ambition. But as I turned away from the window, away from the image of Jennifer in her self-imposed exile, I found myself thinking not of what had been lost, but of what had been revealed. The strength in Claire that adversity had uncovered, the loyalty in Ethan that crisis had awakened, the resilience in myself that challenge had affirmed. The final chapter of our family's story remained unwritten. Jennifer was out there somewhere, perhaps plotting another move against us, perhaps simply trying to build a new life far from the ruins of her conspiracy. Derek was beginning his years of confinement, paying for his betrayal with the currency of lost freedom. Harold was awaiting trial, his legal maneuvering a last desperate attempt to avoid the consequences of his actions. And we three, Claire, Ethan and I, were moving forward, step by careful step, into a future shaped by but not defined by betrayal. The company would continue, our legacy would endure, different perhaps from what I had envisioned, but no less meaningful for the transformation. As I prepared for bed that night, I found myself thinking of something my mother had told me long ago, when I was just beginning to build what would become Pierce Enterprises. The true measure of success isn't what you accomplish, Elizabeth, it's what you survive. We had survived Jennifer's betrayal, Derek's deception, Harold's return. We had survived the conspiracy that had nearly torn apart everything I had spent a lifetime building. And in that survival, painful though it had been, I found a certain peace. Not the peace of resolution or perfect understanding, but the peace of endurance, of weathering the storm and finding, in its aftermath, the strength to begin again. The future stretched before us, uncertain but full of possibility. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Not the family I had once envisioned, but the family we had become, forged in the fire of betrayal and emerging, somehow, stronger for the tempering. It was enough. It had to be enough. And somewhere, in a corner of my heart that refused to surrender to bitterness or despair, I held a quiet hope that someday, somehow, Jennifer might find her way back. Not to the company or the inheritance she had coveted, but to some form of reconciliation, some healing of the wounds that had driven her to such desperate measures. Until then, life would continue. The company would grow. Claire and Ethan would step into their new roles. And I would watch over them all, guardian of what remained, architect of what might yet be built from the ruins of betrayal. The empire would stand. Different perhaps from what I had imagined, but standing nonetheless. And in the end, that was what mattered most. Wow, what a story! And there is more coming. Don't forget to subscribe to not miss a new stories.